A god transcends worlds, and Fairy Tail will never be the same.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Became the New 10 Tails and Got Teleported to Fairy Tail movie. Before we start, please go support Dante477 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. After Madara's jutsu fails, Naruto becomes the new 10 Tails. Leaving his world, he ends up in Fiori and joins Fairy Tail on their adventures. How will Fiori survive now that Fairy Tail's newest member is the 10 Tails? The dragons must watch out, they're no longer at the top of the food chain. Godlike Naruto. Chapter 1. The End of This World. In an indescribable area, once a land full of trees and vegetation, but now reduced to a bare, uneven scar on the earth, two men with their own ambitions for the world. It is said that atop a body with a grotesquely swollen, rounded form, it crawled on its belly, while protruding from it were thorny projections shaped like surgical branches at right angles. It had a singular eye, occupying most of its head, 4 concentric circles with 6 tomes in the 2 circles closest to the pupil. It also had a wide, cavernous mouth with multiple rows of sharp pointed teeth, as well as a barbed chin. It was possibly the Great World, the source of all chakra. The man on the left stared down at the ground, his uneven eyes narrowing in barely concealed frustration. He wore black trousers and gloves, with a white shirt underneath, presumably fitted. The name Uchiha was printed on the bottom of his shirt and on his lower back. Around his waist, he wore a simple, light purple vest and belt. His left eye had a wavy pattern that stretched across the eyeballs, with pure purple irises and sclera. His right eye, on the other hand, was a striking red with a black design depicting a pinwheel in the center. This man was Uchiha Obito, the one responsible for the Fourth Shinobi World War. The second man simply crossed his arms, his gaze remaining fixed on his face. He was a tall man with fair skin, black hair, and a note that held a slight blue hue. By adulthood, his hair had grown to his waist with a fringe that reached his shoulders, framing the sides of his face and completely covering his right eye. Although still no young man, more prominent wrinkles had developed around each eye. In most cases, in its previous version, the previous part, in the traditional bright red armor, similar to that of a samurai, found in a simple black suit. This armor was constructed from numerous metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body, in particular. The chest, waist, shoulders, and thighs. Unusually, his chest plate left his back completely exposed, probably to better display his clan crest. This attire was accompanied by boots and gloves. Strapped to his back, he wore a black chain that ran down his right sleeve. His Rinnegan eyes observed the scene before him with amusement. His name was Uchiha Madara. His Rinnegan eyes observed the scene before him with amusement. His name was Uchiha Madara. His Rinnegan eyes observed the scene before him with amusement. His name was Uchiha Madara. Several meters away stood the allied shinobi forces, minus the 5 Kage, of course. Standing in the center of the group of distinguished shinobi were 3 Leaf Village shinobi, battle-worn, all of whom were gathering their second breath for the inevitable confrontation against the Uchiha. Most notable among them stood proudly, a determined expression on his face, his fingers crossed, his eyes fixed on Madara's disinterested gaze. He had deep blue eyes and spiky blonde hair. He wore an orange and black jumpsuit with black sandals, as well as a black headband. He also had 3 whisker-like markings on his face that made him look like a cat or a fox. He turned his gaze to Obito and shouted, "You think we're still a disorganized bunch? We are the Shinobi Alliance. Mark my words." Obito said nothing, choosing to stare at them impassively. After a few moments of staring, he finally spoke. "It doesn't matter if there are 1,000 or 100,000 of you, none of you can wait with the power of the 10 Tails. The Eye of the Moon plan will be fulfilled one way or another." The 10 Tails unleashed their fury in agreement, forcing all the allied shinobi to the ground, while the earth trembled beneath the sounds of their creator. Naruto gritted his teeth as he stood, racking his brain for what could be used to defeat the 2 Uchiha. "Kurama, how much longer until you can return?" he questioned, absent-mindedly wiping the sweat from his brow. Within the label, the Kyuubi's closed eyes and Kurama earned a small mark in a meditative posture. "I won't be able to find at least another 5 minutes or so. Just try to hold on until you can get back into the fight," he ordered. "Gotcha." Focusing his chakra once more, Naruto wearily summoned 2 shadow clones to his side. He turned to the shinobi. The beginnings of an idea stirred in his mind. "Ino," he said sharply, drawing her attention, ready to hear his plan. "Do you think you and Hinata can control them again? I only need 2 seconds to pull this off." The seriousness in his voice reflected how much he needed this part of his plan to work. "Yes, although I doubt it will be as easy as it used to be." Nodding, he moved toward the other shinobi. "Anyone with an A-rank Kaiten jutsu up their sleeve?" A chorus of "Hi" answered his question. "Alright, here's what we'll try." With Madara and Obito, the former subtly refined the hand seals they had mastered over their long lives to gain more power. The Ninpo Dauka no Jutsu, Ninja Release. Assimilation technique was based on a jutsu he had begun developing with his brother Izuna. The concept of the jutsu was that the user selectively withdraws their life force. Originally, his plan had been to find a way to restore Izuna's eyes, but he had perished on the battlefield the next day. From his defeat at the hands of Senju Hashirama in the Valley of the End to the moment of trust and love in the Dauka no Jutsu to rejuvenate his life force when his body was reaching its limit. However, this time, his targets were the last remaining Jinchuriki, Naruto and Killer Bee. Even though the 10 tails had been successfully revived, Madara wanted more. He wasn't just focused on becoming a Jinchuriki of an incomplete tailed beast, he wanted to be the shinobi who would finally surpass the Sage of Six Paths. With the Dauka no Jutsu, he could possibly assimilate them both into the judgment, hopefully provoking a reaction from the god. What could I have done? What to do? What will we do? As he paused at the final seal, Madara was about to shout his jutsu so that the allied forces could hear. Dragons of flame, rocks of varying sizes, water bullets from a particular group, blades of wind and tornadoes flying in different directions, and even the occasional streak of lightning could be seen hurtling toward them. Using his connection with the Bijuu, Madara concentrated as the Juubi opened its shark-like mouth. Negative white energy and positive black energy formed at incredible speeds, being swallowed by the beast as they solidified into a condensed ball of chakra. Madara smiled as he prepared the ultimate tailed beast technique. Bijuu Ryaiza. Tailed beast laser. The attack exploded with an intensity that took the shinobi forces by surprise, judging by their shocked faces and rapid pallor. The dense mass of chakra easily swallowed their attacks, cutting a deep trench through the earth as it hurtled toward them. Fire release. Great Dragon Technique Big-tailed Beast Rasen Shuriken. Came Naruto's level and that of most of the shinobi force. It was at that moment, as the devastating force abruptly vanished in strands of chakra, that a massive dragon's head emerged from the cloud of dust that had been raised by the tailed beast Ryaiza, a large sphere of black chakra, surrounded by 4 large points resembling a Fuma Shuriken. Obito glanced at the elderly Uchiha. Enough boasting, let's get started on the project. Facing the approaching attack, he needed to send a new dimension using his Kamui, but, to his disbelief, the expected warp barrier didn't form at all. He looked at Kakashi, not with slight annoyance that he was interfering with his Kamui activation. How is he acquiring knowledge about using Kamui so quickly? Before, he could only teleport objects to a separate dimension, but now he's also able to prevent Kamui from occurring. Madara paid no attention to the incoming fire dragon, slowly going through the hand seals he needed for his assimilation jutsu. However, there is no record of him making a mistake in the order of the hand seals. When the roaring dragon finally crashed into them, Madara uttered his jutsu. Ninpo. Dauka no Jutsu. As soon as his body began to decompose, Madara knew something was wrong. The jutsu was supposed to pull the chakra of its targets toward him, not the other way around. Furthermore, he couldn't be the only one affected by the jutsu. This one was performed on his knees, a silent scream etched on his face. Beneath him, Madara could feel judgment writhing in discomfort as chakra cords emerged from his eye and latched onto the various shinobi scattered across the ground. Madara made sure it didn't pierce his heart when 2 cords bound to him and Obito. Then the pain crashed down on them. Beyond what it had truly been. What it had truly been. I literally can't feel it, nor am I fading away piece by piece, flowing straight into Juubi's little squeal. Despite the burning pain he felt, Madara has been the one to observe the ground. He wasn't the only one affected by his unintentional jutsu, every single member of the allied shinobi forces was either dead or dying. What would happen? What would happen? What would happen? Why was this happening? He was supposed to enslave the shinobi world and rule it, with Obito trapped in his own ideal world. So why was this happening to him? Naruto let out a groan of pain as all the chakra cords connected. He had seen Kakashi and Bee literally shrink and die before his eyes. His team was gone. Sakura had fallen to the jutsu, and Sai was too low on chakra to last much longer as well. The Konoha teams had also perished, their last words a tearful farewell, filled with comforting words to one another. Kurama, I need help. In it. Here is my chakra. Naruto's 9 tails chakra mode activated, unleashing the power of the Bijuu within him. Unfortunately it wasn't a good idea. Naruto cursed as he felt the cords tighten to the point where it was becoming difficult to breathe. Why the hell isn't this coming out? He yelled, pounding the ground as the pain intensified. The vast amount of knowledge flowed into him. Experiences he hadn't had in the past, meetings and plans he'd never imagined, jutsu he'd never heard of, and various shinobi tactics he could barely comprehend. But it didn't stop there. The memories of several different people were also being stored within him. Inside the seal, Kurama was also assaulted with memories, the memories of his brothers and sisters. He clutched his head, trying to slow the flow of information and try to escape his current predicament. Damn it, at this rate, we're all going to become part of the 10 Tails. What did that damn Madara do? Outside, Naruto's body was also beginning to explode. You could feel his legs getting hotter and hotter until they felt like burning flames trying to burst from them. His bones were making various disturbing and unbearable sounds that were muffled by the 10 Tails players. Is this it? Am I going to die like this? No, I refuse to let this end like the Zero Sennin and my dad volunteered for me to find the answer to breaking the cycle of hatred. I can't just give up. Not now, never. With a supreme effort of willpower, Naruto forced himself to form a shadow clone. The clone nodded and began preparing a tailed beast ball, only to be stopped by a voice they never expected to hear again. Naruto. Don't attack, you'll end up tearing yourself to pieces. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as they found themselves facing another Bidjuu once again. Just like last time, they were positioned above their heads. Turning around, Naruto quickly noticed an obvious change. Where's Kurama? Why isn't he here? Son Goku, the four-tailed ape, was the one who delivered the news. Kurama is currently fighting to prevent his form from decomposing into chakra and spreading into the 10 Tails. He shouldn't contact us. Instead, he needs all his concentration on his living state and on this world. His voice was raspy and deep, sounding like rocks clashing together. Standing up, Naruto began working to save his hands. Well, what are you waiting for? Tell me what I have to do to help. You obviously have an idea of how to get out of this situation, right? He questioned, his arms hanging at his sides as his hopeful gaze fell upon them all. Goku took a breath before speaking again. We have an idea, but the price might be too high to pay. The ape shifted from one massive arm to the other, avoiding the young sage's curious gaze. Judgment is the focal point of Madara's jutsu, but we are the ones who comprise the 10 Tails. Instead of all of you merging with judgment, the current presence can interfere and modify the jutsu so that you are the only one who will benefit from it. Naruto recorded the chakra chords that granted him knowledge of the other shinobi. You mean that the things that happened were your doing? Surprisingly, he wasn't angry with them. We had done what we thought was best for the world. Of all the shinobi, he was the only one they actively helped and entrusted with their power. Madatabi, the two-tailed cat, spoke next, his voice low and solemn. Yes. We have no other choice, and it was the only thing we were capable of doing at this time. However, his gaze turned sad, and he looked away. If you continue with this, you may lose yourself to the other presences within Jubi. Or you may change your personality. Either way, you will never be the same after all this. Naruto paled at that. Would he never be the same? Compared to the alternative, which was completing the war and celebrating with the civilians. Hearing his thoughts, the Three Tails Asobu turned his gaze to Naruto. What are you saying? That you could be overcome by Madara's nature and decide to conquer the world as well? That's not how it works. A part of all those who died in the war will accumulate within you. Naruto blinked. When we did it that way, either situation was bad still. Madara had to compete with the other aspects of the allied force if he wanted to seriously corrupt Naruto. Sure, he might end up being a little more arrogant, but it wasn't like that was a bad thing, right? Go ahead, but I'd like you to do something for me. Tmei was the one who asked the question. What is the request you wish us to make? We may not be able to help you in any way other than listen. Naruto nodded. That was the best we could get and he was willing to accept it. When you're together again, could Kurama be the basis for the fusion? Despite the fact that the Bidjuu couldn't be perfectly replicated in some human expressions, Naruto could definitely tell they were confused. Since his defeat at the Valley of the End, Kurama hasn't had the chance to truly be free. He would cherish that and make it the dominant personality in his own fusion. He finished, his eyes fixed on each of them. Everything that was done in silence while Naruto disappeared from his plane of consciousness. Physical world. The 10 Tails sank into the ground, their bodies disintegrating as more and more chakra was diverted into the young Uzumaki. All that remained were their heads and upper bodies, 5 outrageously long tails, and their left arm. By now, all that remained of the shinobi who had been present was their clothing. Even Madara's Edo Tensei body had been absorbed by Naruto's ever-changing new body. She was almost identical to the previous one, though there were several differences. For example, her fingers now ended in dangerously sharp claws that gleamed in the moonlight, her whisker marks had almost disappeared, and her hair was longer than ever. In fact, it was styled like her father's, but generally had the shape of a lion's mane. Her body had also built up more muscle. Enough to clearly define her muscles through her clothing, but compact and not too ripped. The best way to do it was finally figured out. With their work done, the Doka no Jutsu was unleashed. Not a sound was made, and the earth trembled with anticipation. Would this being be their savior or their executioner? Naruto's eyes slowly opened, revealing themselves to the world. The black sclera, containing the 10 Tails' eyes, gazed at the moon. His lips stretched into a charming smile. I did it, I'm still in control. He enhanced his finger on the moon. That's it, you bastards. Uzumaki Naruto is the undisputed number one. NA. Just so you know, Naruto will be leaving his world in the next chapter. He may have several weapons and items that could be necessary on his adventures. I'm giving Naruto 5 weapons to use. Samehada, Tetsuseiga, Bakuseiga, Kubikurumjim, and Madara's Great War Fanatic. Harem for History. Urza Scarlet. Lucy Hertfilia. Aya, can someone say Eridit Catfight? Conan. Samui. Varahin Strauss. Duvialoxer. Female Sasuke, I've always wanted to try this pairing. Oh, and Urza Nightwalker, she's got the whole bad girl thing going on. Plus, this adds a twincest element to the story, well, sort of. Chapter 2. The Dragon Tamer. Standing proudly on the sands that made up the wasteland, Uzumaki Naruto maintained the stance he had assumed immediately after his rebirth. His right hand was thrust toward the night sky with his index finger pointing toward the moon, his left hand resting casually against his waist, while his feet were firmly planted on the ground. An arrogant smile appeared on his face, revealing the elongated fangs that were hidden behind his lips, and his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Of course, after a few moments of remaining like that, he quickly grew serious. His smile faded until his mouth formed a thoughtful frown. At this moment, he was probably the sole survivor of the Fourth Shinobi World War. He had seen what Madara had done to the Five Cage, and despite how much he didn't want to believe it, there was a very real possibility that they were at death's gate. The part of him, the part that was originally his true self, wanted to rush to Tsunade Bachin and the others and help, but the other, more logical side of him made him stay put. Even though Sakura knew medical jutsu, she knew it wouldn't help in any way. Knowing how to do something wasn't the same as actually being able to do it. The Bunshin no Jutsu was something everyone had been taught at the Ninja Academy, yet it was still the one jutsu she'd never be able to master well, at least not for a while. Scanning the wasteland that had once vibrated with life, Naruto finally noticed the state of his clothes. His jumpsuit was officially wrecked. The garment had been shredded into multiple threads in every conceivable place. Not even his pants had survived the transformation. Yet his boxers were miraculously intact. He blinked stupidly at the absurdity of the situation. His underwear was indestructible while his jumpsuit wasn't. There must be some crazy universal law in anime or something. Wait, what the heck is anime? Focusing on his current situation, Naruto cast a penetrating glance around, his eyes taking in every detail. Unlike before, when he had appeared in the incomplete 10 tails, his eyes now possessed the 9 complete tomo surrounding the 4 concentric waves. It would seem that the fusion had completed the powers of his eyes. Sorting through the varied clothing scattered across the area, Naruto thoughtfully touched his chin as he mentally decided what to choose. He had to force himself to look at the Kunoichi outfit several times during the process. He was a guy, damn it, no matter how many feminine experiences had been thrown at him. After examining the various garments lying strewn across the ground, Naruto quietly made his way to the bundle that had belonged to Kakashi. He knelt beside it, searching for the item he had always desired since meeting his sensei. Finding the copy ninja face mask next to his headband, Naruto allowed a sad smile to grace his lips. While a part of Kakashi would always be with him, it still hurt to know that his mentor would no longer be with him in this world. Adjusting the mask to his face, Naruto was about to move on to other shapes when an idea struck him. Why don't I use Inten Banbutsu Sozo to create something for myself? He thought. It wasn't such a bad idea. With at least a few hundred kage bunshin, he'd be able to create something that was both efficient and suited to his tastes. Yeah, that seems like a good idea, he said to himself, his words soft and gentle on the wind. Several puffs of smoke later, Naruto was unpleasantly surprised to see that, instead of creating a single shadow clone, he had used enough chakra to create what appeared to be 50 clones. At that moment, he felt an urge to bang his head against something. How the hell did I forget that my chakra control would be like crap after assimilation? That should have been the first thing I thought of. Rubbing his head in frustration, Naruto gestured to the assembled shadow clones. Alright, guys, I want half of you to work on Inten Banbutsu Sozo, while the other half work on every chakra control exercise you can remember. I'm going to search the battlefield and see what weapon I can find myself. All the clones saluted intelligently. Hi boss. They all dispersed into the distance, appearing as nothing more than blurs in the night. Naruto sighed as he felt a clone dissipate because it accidentally bumped into a tree. This is going to take a while. The easily located Samehada, one of the 7 swords of Kiri with whom he had been intimate. Its white bandages stood out against the dark earth, casting an ethereal glow around the sensitive blade. His footsteps sounded loud in the stillness of the night. When he reached it, Naruto grasped the hilt without hesitation, watching as the sword's handle glowed a malevolent black and the human skull at the end of the handle transformed into a canine skull in its place. Well, you don't look good, your chakra has become even more delicious than ever, master. The voice was soft, sensual, and surprisingly feminine. If Naruto ever thought he'd seen everything the world had to offer, he made a mental note to erase it from his mind. Oh. You seem surprised I can talk, then again, I can't say I blame you for that line of thinking. Okay, so you can read my mind now? Before you answer that, what happened to you? You know, the whole glowing handle and shape-shifting skull thing? Naruto asked. Even though it was a little unsettling to have a female voice in his head, Naruto was quite pleased with it. It reminded him of the recent times when he and Kurama had talked. That was a sign that I'm yours. Never in my existence have I encountered chakra that tastes as divine as yours and is limitless. To refuse you would be nothing short of foolish. Besides, without a source of chakra to feed me, I would eventually wither and die. Can you imagine how ugly my scales would look? No, thank you. Naruto still found it strange to think of Samehada as feminine. The bandages that were usually wrapped around her loosened and began to wrap around Naruto, covering some of the glaring holes in his current attire. Naruto stared at her, fascinated. He'd only ever seen bandages used to wrap Samehada's scales. He'd never thought they could be used this way. Thanks for that, Same-chan. Just to be sure, is your name really Samehada? He asked, lifting her onto his shoulder. A grunt escaped his lips as she sank her teeth into his shoulder, a grunt of surprise, not pain. Very well, more, feed me more, Naruto-sama. Naruto shuddered as a loving moan escaped his lips. Maybe it was a bad idea. Was she really draining his chakra? That's creepy as hell. What's next? Am I going to have a harem of women? Finally, after a few tugs to snap her out of her daze, Samehada loosened her grip on his shoulder. Forgive me, Naruto-sama, but your chakra just tastes so irresistibly good, and my name is whatever you wish it to be. Before I was called Samehada, I didn't even have a name yet. I didn't care about something so trivial. Does a weapon need a name? As long as I was being fed chakra, I never bothered to make myself a name. Her voice held no emotion whatsoever, yet it was very light. It was almost as if she were making a statement about the weather. Naruto didn't say anything, he simply nodded and settled into a comfortable sitting position. So, what do you know about forging weapons? Feeling his scales begin to tense, Naruto quickly tried to avoid a misunderstanding. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you, but I feel like I should forge my own weapons. It would also be good for me to make my own blades. Maybe a smaller blade for infighting. Samehada let out a snort. Well, I'm not sure about that idea. I do know about forgery. I can teach you a few things in exchange for your chakra. Naruto lowered his head in exasperation. What was he, food? At that moment, a few more clones dissipated, earning a sigh from the blonde. This is really going to take a while. Time omitted, 1 year later. Naruto wiped a strand of sweat from his brow as he raised the blade he had just finished forging. At that moment, he was in the same cavern that Madara had frequented for the past few years. What he had planned to do was create a pair of demonic swords that would work in conjunction with Samehada and Kubikuramji. He had discovered Zabuza's sword in the hands of Hazuki Sujetsu, one of Sasuke's team members, and had asked for it to be handed over. He had even included the word please. Sujetsu had laughed at him and called him a retard. Naruto laughed at his dead body after he finished him off. It was actually quite easy when you think about it. Sujetsu was weak against lightning and extreme heat, something Naruto now had access to. Combined with his limitless chakra reserves, one of the advantages of Ito Tensei, Naruto had simply killed the Taka shinobi, turning his liquid form into water vapor. In any case, he had kept Kubikuramji because it was capable of repairing itself using the iron in its blood. Such an ability was very useful, and he had no intention of letting any civilians stumble upon it and use it for their own purposes. So, despite Samehada's complaints, he had begun practicing his kenjutsu with both Kiri blades. With Samehada, he focused on coordinating his attacks so that its scales could pierce, shave, disembowel, and kill his enemies with the first strike. His ability to feast chakra was also something he had practiced. With Kubikuramji, Naruto simply had to adjust his fighting style to quick but powerful attacks that could end a battle before it even began or dragged on. He stared at the scabbard containing the sword, pride gleaming in his swirling eyes. It was expected. After all, who would expect to create such fine work on their first try? The scabbard was plain white, though with several lines of runes along its length. At the end was a purple thread tied in the shape of the letters E. Wow, I haven't even unsheathed it, but I can already feel the power emanating from it, he murmured. As he lowered the blade, Naruto arched his back, letting out a satisfied sound as his bones made tiny clicks. I think I'll take a break and work on it later. I also need to create some new clothes. He mused. The clothes he wore were nothing more than civilian attire, made to keep him clothed. However, they weren't nearly as durable as shinobi clothing, so he often ended up destroying them in his daily activities. He sat down on one of the two beds in the dark cavern and crossed his arms. One of his clones had overheard news of Sasuke and Orochimaru while heading to the nearest village, and what he'd heard had surprised him as well. Apparently, they'd both been killed in battle by an unknown kunoichi. If he'd been all Naruto, he would have gone after her in retaliation or something like that. Now, he was simply curious to know who the person was. Sasuke was listed as an A rank missing nin in the bingo book, and Orochimaru was a Sannin, someone on par with a Kage, and the one who killed the third Hokage. For them to be defeated, their opponent must have been at least at the Kage level. Lying on his back in bed, Naruto hummed a tune to himself as he drifted off to sleep. The next day. Stepping out into the sunlight, Naruto had to admit that the sight of nature was far more pleasant outdoors than in the sorry excuse of a residence where he'd been living for the past year. His hair had grown longer, reaching halfway down his back as a third bang developed between his other two, and Samehada was strapped to his back like his predecessors. He wore indescribable shinobi attire, consisting basically of a shirt and pants with sandals, and had his demonic sword strapped to his left hip. Kubikurubm was sealed in a scroll, which was safely stored in his pocket dimension to prevent anything from happening to it. His crimson-slit eyes settled on a branch that offered a great vantage point, and he leaped toward it. Despite the 100-meter gap separating them, Naruto easily closed the distance and landed carefully on the branch. Activating his 10 tails eyes, Naruto scanned the area which was pretty damn near, by the way trying to detect any nearby chakra. He stiffened at the sight of what might possibly be the greatest source of chakra a human could ever hope to achieve. The chakra itself seemed familiar, yet different at the same time. It was capable of passing for a typical shinobi, but its innate nature was entirely different from that of his deceased comrades. "Want to check it out, Same-chan?" he questioned. Samehada resonated once, its version of Sasuke's famous HN. Taking it as a yes, Naruto focused on his chakra signature. Instantly activating Jikiken Ido, Naruto vanished in a swirling vortex from his location, leaving nothing out of place. When he landed at the chakra signature location, the first thing he saw was a hooded figure standing in a forest on the border of Hai no Kuni. The white cloak the figure wore did nothing to conceal the curves that identified her as a kunoichi, as well as the enlargement of her breasts, which Naruto estimated to be around a large teacup. She wore steel-toed boots and had black armbands that extended to her elbows. He couldn't see what she wore beneath her cloak, but he could see that she had black hair peeking out from under her hood. She had Sasuke's Kusanagi blade strapped to her back just as he had done. It was the handle that caught Naruto's eye. Unlike most shinobi, who would immediately assume defensive positions when a man randomly appeared in a vortex, she simply tilted her head curiously. As he did so, Naruto could see that she wore a silver mask that revealed her delicate mouth and soft lips, but concealed everything else from view. He idly wondered why she wore a mask, but filed those thoughts away for another time. Standing up, Naruto let his right hand slide down to rest on the hilt of his nameless sword, while his left hand offered a lazy wave. What could a kunoichi like you possibly be doing in these borderlands, if you don't mind me asking? Just admiring the scenery. The masked woman stared at him, patiently awaiting his reply. After a few moments of silence, she answered his question. "No, I'm looking for a new master to claim me." Naruto was pretty sure that if he'd been a younger man, he would have been experiencing a severe nosebleed at his response. Behind him, Samehada was laughing in its terrifying way, its scales contracting and relaxing at irregular intervals. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto let some of its shock seep into his voice. "Coming back? Are you looking for a new master?" At its silent nod, Naruto dared to ask another question. "Are you telling me you're into S&M in addition to role-playing games?" She shrugged indifferently. "If that's what my master wants, I'll follow his instructions as best I can." Naruto blinked twice. "Well, I certainly didn't expect that reaction. I thought she'd at least come up with some excuse or something." "That's all well and good, but who are you?" "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, former shinobi of Konohagakure." Naruto saw no harm in letting him know which village he came from. What he'd learned during his time alone was that most shinobi used the villages their opponents came from to know what to expect. Most people from Konohagakure had a fire nature, Kumagakure had a lightning nature shinobi, Sunagakure had a wind nature shinobi, Iwagakure had an earth nature shinobi, and Kurigakure had a water nature shinobi. The woman immediately knelt in reverence, confusing the masked blonde. "My apologies, Naruto-sama. I am Uchiha Satsuna, former Naanbu of Konohagakure and Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kurum. Please allow me to take care of you." Naruto felt his brain shut down. "Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, isn't that it? Did you just say Kyuubi no Kuruyo? Not Kurama, though? How do you even know its name?" To say Naruto was going crazy would be an accurate description. Here was an Uchiha in front of him, a descendant of that bastard Madara. Wait, if he was part of him, did that make him a bastard too? Calling herself the Jinchuriki of what appeared to be a female Kurama. Suddenly, he was grateful to the Sage of Six Paths for giving him a male Nine Tails, who knows how he would have survived with a female massive chakra and hatred. The woman Setsuna removed her hood, revealing long, silky raven-colored hair braided into a ponytail with a red cord, while two bangs framed her face like Sasuke's. Her delicate fingers reached for her mask, and Naruto tightened his grip on his sword. She gently removed the mask, and Naruto could only stare, a mixture of horror and amusement in his eyes. Her Sharingan was already active, 3 tomo lazily swirling around her pupils. She had the same facial structure as her male counterpart, but Naruto could see that while Sasuke's looks had been somewhat Binshinen, Setsuna's was undeniably feminine. Looking into her eyes, Naruto couldn't find the usual hatred he'd come to expect from Sasuke. If anything, her eyes were very much like Haku's. You're a woman, Sasuke. On one hand, this was a pretty creepy situation. Seeing the female counterpart of someone you know is always going to be as weird as hell. On the other hand, the parallels between Setsuna and Haku were becoming clear. Like Haku, Setsuna seemed to have lost her master and couldn't seem to face the idea of living her life without one. Yes, Uchiha Sasuke is this world's version of me. It's surprising that he abandoned his village for power. Something must have happened to make him turn out this way. She said, still kneeling before him. I don't know why you're kneeling, but can you stand up? It's a little embarrassing for me, he asked. Yes, Naruto-sama. She stood up immediately, her head still bowed in submission. When I fought Uchiha Sasuke and the Sannin Orochimaru, their last words before dying were that you could defeat me. All my previous masters have been stronger than me and have become a standard for me, and since you are the strongest being in this world, that makes you the only option for me. Naruto felt a headache coming on. How did you get here? Was it an accident or was your trip planned? She shook her head. Negative. Itachi Nai pushed me into this dimension through his Mangekyo Sharingan to prevent the criminal organization Daybreak from stopping me. I was fully prepared to die, but Kurum had other ideas. I see. Just to be clear, what rank are you? I was scheduled to join Anbu the day after we were attacked. At this point, I'd say I'm not a Jonin, but definitely higher than a high-level Chunin without using Kurum's chakra. When I tap into its power, I estimate I'm at least high level. Sai, you're not going to leave me if I tell you to do it, are you? As he expected, she resolutely shook her head. Rubbing his forehead, Naruto silently gestured for her to take his hand. Feeling her place her hand on his shoulder, he teleported them to his house. Time omitted, 1 year. Setsuna Uchiha watched with curiosity and wonder, though her face remained as blank as ever, as her teacher skillfully drew several seals on the ground. They were in a clearing somewhere within Kumo no Kuni, just outside one of the many hideouts of the deceased Obito Uchiha. Throughout the year, they had traveled from one hideout to another, searching for anything that might be useful and sealing away anything that wasn't. Naruto had initially been skeptical about her reasons for offering herself to him in servitude, but as the weeks passed, he grew more accustomed to her presence. Naruto considered her something of a friend and often pointed out how far he should go in catering to her whims. He wasn't going to treat her the way Zabuza had initially treated Haku. To him, she, too, had the right to live her life independently of him. Unfortunately, Setsuna vehemently opposed that stating that she would follow him to the ends of the earth if he so desired. He crossed his arms as he watched from his perch in a nearby tree, opening his cloak to reveal what he wore beneath. Tight black pants with a purple cloth tied around his waist and a navy blue shirt. They were preparing to travel to other dimensions for a reason. The shinobi era was nearly over. With only Genin and a handful of Chunin left in all the villages, it was only a matter of time before civilians took over. If they stayed, the daimyo would always fear them, and that fear would turn to hatred. Such was human nature. Lowering his sealing brush, Naruto exhaled in relief. The seal he'd been working on was incredibly complex, utilizing the principle of Kamui to send them to another world. Apparently, there were multiple dimensions in the universe, meaning that if he left this world, there was a good chance he'd never return. He turned to his servant, he preferred the term assistant, but she continued to refer to herself as such, and nodded. The seal is complete. Ready to go? Yes, Naruto-sama. She replied, leaping from her position. Landing beside him in the center of the seal, she let a small smile cross her face. We'll be on our way. Right. Activating his Mangekyo Sharingan, Naruto began forming the hand seals for the jutsu. By the way, are Sasuke's eyes still in perfect condition? Setsuna nodded. Rummaging in her cloak, she pulled out a glass vial containing 2 eyes encased in a clear liquid. The eyes resembled 3 intersecting ellipses with straight pinwheels in the center and a red design on a black background. Sasuke's eye and no Mangekyo Sharingan. He had harvested them after his battle with both missing nin, preventing any other shinobi from obtaining such powerful eyes. Well, when we get there, I'll assimilate them into my own eyes. That way, no one else will be able to use them and I'll further increase my ocular power. I don't know where we're going to end up and it would be better to have another ace up my sleeve. He found it ironic that not long ago he would never have considered this option, but now he was all for it. She slid the vial back into her cloak as the lines of the seal glowed crimson. Is that why you fused Sasuke's Kusanagi with my Kurohime? She questioned, gently grasping his right arm. Naruto rolled his eyes. Do you really need me to tell you that? He asked as he finished the hand seals. Her response was a chuckle before they vanished in a crimson flash. The Ori, Fairy Tail Guild. In the office of Guildmaster Makarov, two people sat with serious expressions. The first was an extremely short old man. He had dark eyes and white hair that framed his bald head and formed a thick mustache, which he hid beneath a whimsical jester's hat with blue-orange stripes. It was Makarov Dreyer, the master of Fairy Tail. He stood with his hands clasped, gazing with a hidden pride in his eyes at the person before him. She was tall for a 13-year-old boy. She had long scarlet hair that fell over her shoulders, with two strands framing her face. She wore armor custom made by the Heart Crew's blacksmiths, a blue skirt and black boots. Her brown eyes locked onto Makarov's. Mission complete, master. The package was delivered as requested. Makarov laughed at her seriousness. Good work, Urza. Why don't you go take a break? You've been working poorly this week. He suggested. Urza shook her head vehemently, forming a mark. Not until I break Murahin's record. I will be the strongest woman in Fairy Tail. That'll show her who's the strongest. She growled, her armored hand clenched tightly, earning a bead of sweat from Makarov. Let's talk about intense. These young people are always so full of energy, Makarov commented quietly. There was no warning. No spikes of magical energy, no animal commotion, no ominous feeling to prepare them for the oppressive weight that suddenly appeared. Right at that moment, a terrifying roar echoed throughout the city, making Makarov pale with fear. It was the unmistakable roar of a dragon, and not just any dragon. Makarov knew that dragon, the Dragon King himself, Aknoloja. Makarov was out of his seat and opening his window faster than Urza had seen him move. She saw him freeze as he stared out and felt a pang of fear touch her heart as she began to tremble. Reaching him on the balcony, she saw what had frightened Makarov, and she couldn't blame him. The dragon was massive, an enormous black entity that enveloped the city with its eyes. It was a colossal dragon whose upper body was covered in round black scales, which in turn were decorated with blue spirals. Its lower body was gray and appeared smooth. Its head was blunt and rounded with four large elongated plates extending backward, as well as a mouth full of sharp teeth and, below it, an elongated protuberance pointing downward. It was gigantic. Its multi-layered wings were made of the same plates that covered its body, making them resemble bird wings. Its massive tail split in two at the end and took on a double-barbed appearance. It was staring at two children who were standing in the middle of the street, directly in front of them. Urza turned and started to run toward the exit, but was stopped by a strong grip on her shoulder. Wait, Urza. Something's wrong. Makarov shouted, his eyes still fixed on the Dragon King. Urza turned her head to face Makarov, her eyes wide with disbelief and anger. Master Makarov, the children are in danger. At least let me help evacuate those who are nearby. As she spoke, Urza saw many mages from the guild emerging into the street, ready to stand against the dragon. Makarov shook his head, still not looking at her. That's not it. Aknoloja is acting strangely. He hasn't done anything but reveal himself to us, he's just looking at the children. Looking at the scene, Urza could see that the guildmaster had been right. The dragon was simply staring at the children, more specifically the blonde one. Now that Urza had a good look at them, she realized they were teenagers, seemingly in the throes of puberty. The girl wore a white cloak that only revealed her steel-toed boots and the black bracelet she wore. She was quite attractive. Her face was very feminine, as beautiful as Urza's and Murahin's. The boy wore a long, ankle-length black coat with a red lining that was open at the chest and held together by three X-shaped marks, then draped into several loose tails. He also had 4 vertical black lines on his forearms and black tattoo-like bands crisscrossing his chest, wrists, and ankles. Similar bands, but with crimson ends, were wrapped around his neck like collars. His trousers were very streamlined and form-fitting, but hung loosely enough for him to be comfortable. She felt herself blush slightly as his sculpted physique peeked through his clothing. A face mask obscured most of his face and gave her a mysterious look, while his shoulder-length golden hair swung in the wind. A sheathed katana rested on his left hip while a large sword was strapped to his back. Wow, he looked so cool. Her blush deepened. When she finally saw his eyes, she gasped in astonishment. Instead of normal eyes, he had black sclera and crimson eyes with a strange pattern. To her, they looked like 3 commas arranged in a circle. What the hell? Looking at Aknoloja, she blinked once, twice, and 3 times to check if she was dreaming. After confirming that she was indeed lucid, Urza watched in amazement as the same eye she had seen on the child appeared in the Dragon King's eyes. Did he just cast a spell on the dragon? that's impossible. No mere human could catch a dragon like this alone. She watched as the child said something she couldn't hear and moved closer to the dragon's snout, causing him to fall. Each fairy tale wizard went into various states of shock upon seeing the rippling dragon form. Like a projection, the Dragon King slowly vanished. First, it lost its tail, spreading down its legs and stomach, crawling along its forelimbs until only its head remained. After a moment, that too disappeared, merging with the rest of its lifeless body. The boy turned to face the assembled crowd, while the girl ignored them and stared at the two wizards on the balcony. "Hello everyone, can you tell us where the heck we are? We're kind of new here, hey, hey, hey." That day a legend was born, the legendary dragon tamer. A.N. This chapter was a bit of a struggle to write. I had to take so many breaks that I felt like I was writing the Olympics. Anyway, let's get to the good stuff. Setsuna. I deliberately made his background as vague as possible so that throughout the story you can see exactly what contributed to his current situation. I bet you didn't expect me to use Sasuke, did you? At this time, Naruto's weapons are Samehada, Kubikurumchim, Bakuseiga, and Madara's fanatic. Tetsuseiga will appear later in the story. Naruto had other reasons for leaving his world, but you'll have to wait and find out later in the story. Now, a critic asked me to consider adding Altair to the harem. People might say it's getting too big, but I really don't think so. A harem can range from 2 women to about 50. In some romance novels a friend of mine has read, the harem size is often well over a dozen. So. Updated harem list. Urza Scarlet. Barahin Strauss. Setsuna Uchiha. Heiya. Conan. Urza Nightwalker. Yuvia Loxer. Lucy Hertfilia. Altair Milkovich. Please note that Samui will be relegated to the position of servant. No matter how you try to play your situation, it may not work between them. Did anyone catch the latest Naruto chapter? Apparently, the 10 Tails has a perfect form that's about to transform into. Can anyone even try to match me? Also, what's taking Sasuke so long to join the fight? Why do I care? Lol, but seriously, has anyone wondered what exactly the 10 Tails gave Naruto? I'm not sure if it's its will and chakra or something like Itachi's crow, which has a much needed power. Furthermore, the Itachi in Setsuna's world possesses the Mangekyo Sharingan that Obito has. This is a different world from the one we're discussing, so it wouldn't make sense for some traits to remain unchanged or be completely altered. More will be shed on Daybreak and what they had planned for Setsuna. The events leading up to the appearance of Acnologia will be detailed in the next chapter. Note that only those on the battlefield have assimilated into the new Naruto. Sasuke and Orochimaru were heading towards the man who knows everything, also known as Masashi Kishimoto. Tsunade in the cage or dead, come on, do you expect him to restore everyone's health when he's rapidly losing blood from the amputation of his legs? And the remaining shinobi are merely genin with a few chunin scattered about. Suigetsu and Juugo also separated after unsuccessfully searching for Sasuke. Chapter 3. Meet the Guild. The streets, which had been a cacophony of chaos and panic just moments before, were now as silent and lifeless as a graveyard. Many people, mages, and even spirits stared in awe at the blonde teenager and what he had just accomplished. Those who had no idea of Acnologia's position over the Dragon King were astonished that he could command the massive beast, while Makarov and a few other spirits exchanged nervous glances. To tame a dragon, something never before considered in the history of Fiori, and seal it with nothing more than a look. Makarov could only hope that the boy wasn't lulled by the calm of the darkness because of this. In the crowd of fairy tale wizards, 4 teenagers stared at the blonde boy and the black-haired girl with varying expressions. The first, a boy of about 12, wore a look of disappointment, astonishment, and terror at what he had just witnessed. He was slender, slightly muscular, and of average height. His skin was lightly tanned, and his eyes were jet black. His spiky pink hair seemed to defy gravity, sticking out in all directions, as if it had never seen a brush before. He wore a black vest with gold trim over his bare chest, white knee-length pants, a thick black bracelet on his left wrist, open black sandals, and a scarf decorated with white scales. Perched on his shoulder was a small blue cat-like creature that was busy eating a fish. Wow, that guy took care of the dragon so easily. The feline creature nodded comically, still eating the fish. Yes. But Natsu, if he could defeat the dragon, what kind of chance do you stand against him? You're doomed if you face him. Natsu shot the cat a dirty look. A nice way to show your friend some support, huh? He declared sarcastically, his voice dry. I do everything I can to deliver. Bastard. The second boy, who appeared to be about the same age as the first, glared at Natsu. Unlike everyone else, he was dressed only in green pants and black boots. His most prominent feature was his spiky black hair. He had dark blue eyes and a fairly toned body. On his right pectoral muscle was a dark blue seal in the shape of a bird. A necklace, which looked like a sword with a stone in it, hung around his neck. Shut up, Natsu. You can't even beat me and you want to deal with that guy. And you wonder why I call you an idiot, lizard breath. Natsu, who had been administering a noogie to Happy, turned to face the apparent exhibitionist. What did you call me, Gray? At least I'm not an exhibitionist who can't stand the heat, you idiot. When the two boys started arguing again, the last in the group saw Urza and Makarov exit through the doors, the latter heading toward the unknown strangers and the former walking toward their group. The first girl wore a rather revealing gothic outfit. She wore a dark, sleeveless shirt adorned with some curved motifs on the chest, leather shorts held up by a studded belt with a demon-like buckle, and thigh-high boots with stiletto heels, each decorated with a skull and flower on the upper front. She also sported a bracelet shaped like a demonic arm around her right wrist, a ring on the middle finger of the same hand, and dark nail polish. Her large blue eyes never strayed from the blond man, who was occupied by the master, and her long white hair swayed as she moved from one foot to the other. Her hair was tied back in a high ponytail with a huge dark ribbon, but she let a large strand fall across her forehead, while two fringes framed her face and extended to her chest. She crossed her arms as a look of disgust spread across her face. That guy seems really cute, doesn't he, Lysana? The last person of interest could only be described as the sister of the previous girl. She was a small girl with short white hair and blue eyes. She wore a simple pink dress paired with dark red shoes. Mirani, she sighed wearily, though one could see her cheeks flush slightly. Urza soon approached them, frowning in a way that indicated the older sister was eager to return. Marahin. She acknowledged him stiffly. Scarlet. Marahin replied, as curtly as her red-haired rival, bowing her head in a way that passed for greeting. Turning just in time to see the boy and Master Makarov heading toward his office, she let out a small snort of annoyance. Damn it, I wanted to talk to the girl before she left with Gigi. She grumbled, crossing her arms over her chest. As if I'd ever want to talk to you about anyone. Urza bit her lip, her eyes narrowing. Suddenly, a hand landed on her shoulder, startling the three girls into jumps. When Urza turned around, she found herself staring into the eyes of the woman who had been with the male, a calculating onyx. Shaking her shoulder, Urza responded with a glance toward the unfamiliar girl. Sorry to interrupt your conversation, but could you tell me where Naruto and I are? Her voice cut through the boys' argument, drawing their attention to the girls. When Natsu and Gray turned to them, Lysana took the initiative to answer Satsuna's question. Well, you're in Fairy Tail, the only guild in Magnolia Town. You've probably heard that before we, have a bad reputation. She admitted sheepishly, shooting a sharp glance at Natsu. The boy whistled innocently as he avoided her gaze, causing Satsuna to raise an eyebrow. What's a guild? Satsuna asked, storing the previous information in her mind. She lowered her head as everyone, including Happy, stared at her as if she'd suddenly grown two heads. What is it? Urza sighed wearily. I wonder if Master Makarov is having better luck with that other guy than we are. Makarov's office. In the master's office, Makarov rubbed his head in frustration as Naruto, sitting across from him and drinking sake, smiled disarmingly. The old master opened his eyes to scoff at the youngsters before him. The story he had just heard was very hard to swallow. Hearing things like Shinobi, Chakra, the Akatsuki, and the progenitor of that world being revived, one could easily understand his skeptical views. So you're telling me you come from another world? A world constantly filled with constant warfare and subterfuge. Naruto nodded, setting down his mug, his eyes taking on a serious light. Yes. 2 years before I tried to leave, we were in the middle of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. No, the better word would be climax. All the shinobi nations allied against the true leader of Akatsuki, a man named Uchiha. Obito and his partner, Uchiha Madara, a legend among the shinobi world. His eyes flicked to Madara's Iron no Mangekyo Sharingan, unknowingly sending a jolt of surprise down Makarov's spine. They planned to revive the Ten Tails, a primordial demon that was the progenitor of my world and was defeated by the Sage of Six Paths, and use its power to cast an infinite illusion over the world using the moon as a medium. Makarov twitched his mustache as he listened, fascinated. Why would they want to do that? Were they planning to enslave everyone in your world, or did they have an even grander plan in the works? A part of him was still skeptical about all of this, but he couldn't deny there was some merit to young Naruto's story. He had never seen any kind of magic capable of casting such an illusion in the world, nor had he ever seen or heard of such strange eyes before. Naruto frowned as he recalled the Uchiha's motivations. Obito watched the love of his life die before his very eyes, at the hands of the person to whom he entrusted nothing less than everything, and joined Madara in his attempt to carry out the Eye of the Moon plan, so he could be reunited with her. Madara, on the other hand, wanted a world where the concept of winners never existed, meaning that his constant loss to Senju Hashirama would no longer matter. He also desired a world where peace was meaningless, a world filled with even more bloodshed and carnage than the elemental nations were already experiencing. Makarov let out a sigh. He was a war merchant, wasn't he? He'd seen plenty of those types over the years and knew that instigating a war was something this Madara would do. Yes. In order to accomplish this, they needed to capture all the tailed beasts scattered throughout the United Nations. Obito, accused of impersonating Madara after his death, manipulated several shinobi into joining their cause, though he remained in the shadows for quite some time. While he was out of the spotlight, the Akatsuki leader was the one who pushed through the tailed beast extraction in his place. Naruto rested his head in his hands, his eyes closing as he continued his story. They eventually succeeded, though the 10 tails was incomplete. They needed the complete tailed beast to be whole, but they failed to obtain the 8 tails and the 9 tails. The only reason the 10 tails was revived was because Obito managed to grab a portion of its chakra for the ritual. He stopped, poured himself another cup of sake, and gulped it down without a care in the world. Makarov couldn't decide whether he should be amused or disgusted by the boy's drinking habit. I'm not sure what the legal drinking age was for you in your world, but in Earthland, a child your age can't drink sake or alcoholic beverages for quite some time, he declared with a pleased smile. Naruto shrugged. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, and old enough to buck, so you could say my legal age would be 12. Not like you have any stronger stuff at your bar, right? Makarov let out a long, loud laugh, his small figure trembling with delight. Has anyone ever told you that you're a very interesting guy? All the damn time. Fairy tale, ground floor. Meanwhile, Urza and the others continued their interaction with Setsuna. After getting over their initial shock at someone not knowing what a guild was, they proceeded to bombard her with various details about magic, guilds and dark guilds, dragons, and anything else they could think of. The Redeed frowned as she watched Setsuna conversing with Murahin and Grey. She doesn't act like any ordinary civilian, yet her movements and body language reveal nothing about her. Her eyes narrowed as she glimpsed the sword strapped to her back. The sword was rather small compared to some of her own blades, but Urza could tell it wasn't the blade size that made it dangerous. She would have to see the blade itself to determine exactly what made it special, perhaps a hilt was in order. Natsu's voice cut through her thoughts and pulled her back into the conversation. So, Setsuna, who's that other guy you were with? He must be really strong, huh? I mean, did you see how he took care of that dragon? It was so amazing. She asked, her eyes filled with curiosity and amazement as she recalled the scene once more. Murahin also turned to the former shinobi with interest. Yeah, the girl seems strong. Is he your boyfriend or something? She teased. Urza could have sworn she heard a slight change in Mira's question, though she was also interested in the answer. It's not that I like him or anything. I just want to know if they have some kind of illicit relationship. Yeah. I was already quite interested in the guy, and it would be bad if Setsuna were his girlfriend and she got in the way because she didn't know. Setsuna shook her head in response. Naruto-sama isn't my boyfriend. He's my master, and I'm his tool. All his wishes are my commands, and I'll do them to the best of my ability. She replied as she received her steaming cup of herbal tea from Lisana, who had decided to offer her a drink. Thank you for the tea, Lisana-san. The group, except for Lisana, who had been preparing Setsuna's tea for her, stared at her in amazement with varying degrees of disbelief. Natsu and Happy actually seemed frozen in place, their mouths hanging in identical expressions of shock, while Grey had a slight blush on his face. Murahin was actually quite surprised by the response she received, so much so that she dropped the slice of bread she was about to bite into. She quickly recovered and leaned forward, a sly smile on her angelic face. Oh. Guys, role-playing game, huh? Well, isn't that interesting? Do you mind if I join? She asked, with a hint of enthusiasm in Urza's opinion. Setsuna's eyes narrowed as a tiny amount of killing intent erupted from her, projected toward the elder Strauss. Naruto-sama requires only one tool, and I will not allow him to carry anything less than suitable. You are unworthy to be his weapon. The face of a snarling fox appeared behind her, its jaws wide open, revealing several rows of sharp teeth, further enhancing the glow she sent toward Murahin. The girl also unleashed her kai as she became enraged by Setsuna's words. Would you mind repeating that again, bitch? Her tone was colder than an iceberg, and she gained a considerable distance from the onlookers watching the two girls. Are you implying I'm weak? Do you think you're stronger than me? She snarled, barely restraining herself from slamming Setsuna's face into the ground. I don't think so, I know it. Naruto-sama deserves only the best, and that's clearly not you. Setsuna smiled at the end as she watched a murderous glare grow on Murahin's face. Kurum-chan, do you mind if I have to summon your chakra during the fight? Of course you can. She tried to take your place beside Naruto-san, your alpha, just don't end it too quickly. I want to savor this fight. Of course. Makarov's office. So why did Acnologia appear in Magnolia Town? Was it somehow related to your crossing into this world? Makarov questioned, his eyes flashing with curiosity. Speaking of which, what exactly did you do to the Dragon King? Naruto blinked in confusion. That excuse from a dragon is the Dragon King of this world. Bahamut-sama would either laugh at his scaly butt or be very keen to teach the other dragons a lesson, he muttered. Well, I'm not really sure if my space-time seal was the trigger for Anko Alk in the scaly butt's appearance, but I'm sure it was a factor in the situation. When we crossed over here, I didn't immediately end up next to Setsuna. I ended up in a huge cave, staring at the scaly butt. He was angry about being the strongest being in the world and talking down to the humans who were insignificant worms beneath him. To be honest, I actually spaced myself out more than a couple of times during his monologue before getting bored and teleporting to Setsuna's location, which happened to be this place. He shifted in his seat, finishing the rest of his sake in one gulp. I'm pretty sure he followed me using his own space-time ability because I left during his little speech. Being a Dragon King, it must be the first time someone's ignored him like that, and he probably wouldn't be able to play it cool. Makarov scratched his chin as he pondered his words. It's true that Acnologia might have gone after him for that reason. He always talked about how humans were insects to be exterminated by him, and to be ignored by an insect would definitely ignite his fury. However, I feel there's more to it than that. What are you hiding, Uzumaki Naruto? You never said what you did to him there, Makarov pointed out. Naruto nodded, pondering how much he should reveal. After quickly selecting the safe information to disclose, Naruto slammed his fist on the desk, a small smile spreading across his face. Well, to help you understand what I did, I'll need to go over some basics you should know. He raised his index finger. First concept. Bloodline limits. These are genetically passed down abilities within specific clans. There are a few more details, but that's the gist of it. His middle finger joined his index finger, signifying the second concept. The second thing you need to know. The Mangekyo Sharingan. This is an advanced version of the Sharingan, an eye-based bloodline limit, and it's the reason I was able to subdue Aknogi Agnoli, you know what. Hearing the boy talk about sending the Dragon King to another dimension without any remorse made Makarov a little worried. Naruto-san, he began, I'm not sure you understand the situation. Without Acnologia in this world, the natural order of the dragons will spiral out of control, and they might even unleash their frustrations on us humans. He finished, his tone grave. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well, when you put it that way, it sounds bad. However, I think you forgot the fact that he can also use space-time abilities to escape from whatever dimension he's currently in. If that happens, I'm pretty sure he'll keep quiet when a mere human has surpassed him. His pride might help in this situation. At that moment, both men felt the ground tremble. Makarov just sighed in exasperation as Naruto looked on, confused. Seeing the young man's bewildered expression, Makarov let out a wry chuckle. Looks like my sons have started another fight. At this rate, I'm going to be surrounded by mountains of paperwork from the council. He groaned. Naruto let out a laugh as he jumped up from his seat and started cracking his knuckles. Did someone tell you guys you're crazy, old man? Samahata, it's time to eat. He yelled, grabbing the greatsword behind him. With a shit-eating grin on his face, Naruto channeled chakra into his feet and leaped to the door, kicking it open and speeding toward the fight that was taking place. The Dwarven Guildmaster sighed once more. I completely forgot to ask if he'd be joining us. Oh well, I can always do that later today. I wonder if he has any more of that wonderful sake. Fairy Tail, ground floor. Setsuna dodged a straight punch with the ease of someone who had honed their skills through countless hours of training. Marahin didn't let that deter her, following up with a low spinning kick as she fell forward, using her hand for balance as a makeshift platform. She narrowed her eyes in victory as Setsuna leaped to avoid the blow, just as she had planned. Using the momentum from her spinning kick, Marahin spun around, her natural flexibility allowing her to unleash a double boot strike on Setsuna. Unfortunately for Marahin, Setsuna managed to free herself from the deadly stilettos and land safely out of her way. She made no move to attack, opting instead to remove her cloak to avoid it restricting her movements. She sensed Kurum's bloodlust emanating from the seal, silently pleading with her to use Kurohim on the white-haired girl. I'm sorry, but Naruto-sama wouldn't want me to kill someone, maybe when I'm older. It was hard to tell if she was serious or not. Meanwhile, Natsu and Gray watched the fight with growing interest, while Urza sat in a corner, pondering Setsuna's words. Had she offered herself to him willingly? Why would she do that? Images of her time as a slave began to form in her mind, forced to work long hours each day and receiving so little to eat, losing her right eye to protect others. Gel. What made her choose him over her? On one hand, she could understand where Setsuna was coming from. The Ravenette, for as long as she could remember, had been bound to someone she came to recognize as her master. If she strayed from such a lifestyle, she would most likely be lost and unsure of what to do with her life. On the other hand, Urza couldn't help but want to blame Naruto for accepting Setsuna as his weapon, even though he knew he was being biased. Back in the fight, Setsuna ran towards Marahin, her body tucked under the ground. She leaped over the tables and chairs blocking her path and twisted in the air to throw kunai at Marahin, attempting a kick from above to her head. Murahin stepped aside from the kunai, ignoring the shouts of the others when some struck a little too hard for her comfort and blocked Setsuna's kick. Seizing the opportunity, she brutally slammed her fist into Setsuna's inner thigh, using her magic energy to temporarily strengthen her arm tenfold. Setsuna let out a groan of pain before feeling her thigh bone fracture, violently striking Murahin. Jumping back to create some space, she blurred through several hand seals. Extending her left arm, she allowed lightning chakra to flow through her tenketsu and blaze around her hand. Chidori, thousand birds. Murahin slammed her right hand into the ground, causing several rock particles to encase her limb. An excited smile spread across her face as she prepared to charge. Who would have thought that the strange girl would be so good at fighting? Murahin didn't know how that happened, but she didn't care. Now she had another rival, besides Urza, who could even push her to higher levels of strength. Someone who had the ability to defeat her. Not too bad, but I still don't see what makes you so tough. The two girls charged at each other, ignoring the shouts of the spectators as they approached. When they were less than 50 centimeters apart, they both withdrew their fists. A shout interrupted Urza's thoughts before a crash echoed through the room. Turning her eyes to where Setsuna and Murahin were fighting, Urza was granted the vision of Naruto blocking Setsuna's lightning-infused hand with her sword, while her left hand caught Murahin's rock-encrusted fist. Yeah, is that how you greet everyone you see, or is it just me? NA. I'm sorry if you feel like I'm ignoring my other fix, but I just had to get this one out of my system before moving on to the others. Now I have inspiration for all my fix. Chapter 4. Demon King vs Salamander. Naruto glanced at the girl Setsuna had been fighting before he intervened, his eyes continually drawn to her beautiful white hair. She was staring at him in frustration, the frustration of having been denied the chance to defeat her enemy and pushing against his offensive limb in an effort to force him back. Unfortunately for her, Naruto was far stronger than he looked and held her fist with ease. Naruto turned his head to face Setsuna, Samehada happily chewing on lightning chakra. Setsuna, would you mind explaining why you two were fighting? The young women of the guild, including Urza, blushed slightly at his voice. Unlike the other teenagers, Naruto's voice wasn't so deep as to be odd or as high-pitched as a late bloomer like Natsu, it could be described as smooth and silky, yet manly. Setsuna felt a tick mark develop as she caught the very soft pink dust on Murahin's cheeks. Strauss-and wished to be Naruto-sama's tool. Unfortunately, she isn't strong enough to surpass me and is therefore unworthy to replace me as your servant. She didn't handle the truth well and started the fight. I was just going along with it. Naruto often wondered how she could say things like that with a straight face. Setsuna, having withdrawn her hand once Samehada finished ingesting her chakra, retrieved her cloak and wrapped it around herself. The other mages watched the scene before them with noticeable confusion and, in the case of the younger ones, hidden jealousy. The male half was a little jealous that the new kid already had a pretty girl as his servant and was already sinking his claws into the girls' hearts, while the females were more than a little annoyed by Setsuna's attitude. Naruto scratched his head with his right arm, releasing Samehada with the utmost care and letting out a small sigh. Somehow, inexplicably, Naruto knew that something like this wasn't going to be a one-time deal. Dad, Mom, for once, I wish my luck was different. I can already feel the headache of dealing with them. Pretty sure Mom would approve. Quickly frustrated by her lack of success, Murahin decided it was time to make herself heard. Hey. Would you mind taking your hand away before you start getting into your moment? She barked, smacking Naruto on the head with her other hand. However, despite all the fuss she made, Murahin didn't really care about her position. Why? Now she could admire the boy up close and still maintain her image as the demon of fairy tale. Before, she wouldn't have given him a single second glance, but since puberty her hormones had literally opened her eyes to the discovery that boys weren't as ugly as she thought. Naruto was as handsome as she'd imagined, using the brief glimpse she'd caught before he left with Makarov. The upper half of his clothing clung to his tall frame like a second skin, revealing long, slender yet muscular arms that sent pleasant shivers through her. The coat opened at the chest, revealing the red t-shirt beneath, as well as a magnificent view of his abs, and unfurled into a series of cropped flaps in a way that amplified his cool factor. She'd also found the claws he possessed quite intriguing, and the tattoos she could make out whenever he changed, labeled him a bad boy in her book. The mask covering his lower face also intrigued her to the very end. She stifled a smile at the thought. Bad boys were always fun to hang out with. Maybe Naruto wouldn't mind if she spent some time with him. Naruto realized then that he was still holding Murahin's hand and let go with a shy laugh. Sorry. I was trying to stop you too, but I also wanted to show off. I hope you don't mind if I postpone your fight with Setsuna. He paused, clearly not having met the girl before him. Murahin Strauss, the strongest mage in fairy tale. You're not so bad yourself, Naruto-sama. She replied shyly, striking a rather cheeky pose in front of him while subtly flicking her middle finger at Setsuna. Naruto idly noted that she had the features of a curvaceous body and would definitely grow into a very beautiful woman. I suppose Setsuna already mentioned me, right? He asked, already guessing what she must have said. Scanning the crowd with a disinterested gaze, Naruto raised an eyebrow when he spotted two children fighting in the sea of mage limbs. Yeah, she said something about being your tool. Would you mind explaining that, Naruto-san? Naruto turned to see an angry-looking Reed heading toward him, hands on her developing hips and a glint in her eyes that wasn't good for many. Naruto lazily stared into her brown eyes, a book inexplicably materializing in his hands. Are you saying something, Benahim? I didn't notice that, he replied lazily, slowly fanning himself with his book. It was actually quite satisfying to see the Reed gain a foothold, clearly trying to suppress her urge to bang her head. He wondered absent-mindedly if he should scare everyone by eating without removing his mask. Kakashi must have had a reason for doing that, repeatedly. I told him. Everyone could tell from her voice that she was getting frustrated with the new boy quickly. Maybe you should explain what Setsuna meant by that, Naruto-san. Urza almost growled, her frustration with his attitude combined with the fact that Murahin was making rude gestures at her behind Naruto's back, making her more abrasive than usual. Naruto tore his book, humming a tune that neither girl recognized. Isn't it rude to demand something from someone without even introducing yourself first? Urza was about to reply, her face flushing slightly at her forgetfulness, when Murahin smoothly slipped between them, cutting the red-haired mage off. Don't waste your breath on Urza here. She does that almost all the time. In fact, why don't I introduce you to everyone? Urza earned a mark on her rival's interruption. As if I'd want a demon like you to introduce you to anyone. Now move along and let me answer my question. Urza said, not very gently, pulling the goth girl away from the boy, who was watching the proceedings with mild confusion and amusement. So? Why does she call you her master? She questioned, trying to appear as indifferent as possible. That might have worked if she were much more sociable, but unfortunately, she wasn't. Involuntarily, her brown eyes flickered away from him the moment she uttered the question, and her voice betrayed the sadness, angry, and accusatory emotion she felt. Naruto noticed her actions and silently concluded that Urza had some history with slavery. Whether she had participated, been forced into it, or been a slave herself was something he didn't want to ask. He had also kept most of his secrets from Makarov during their little chat, after all. Setsuna refers to me as her master because she wishes to call me that. Despite what she says, I'm more like her friend than her teacher. He replied, lazily flipping through the pages of his sealing book. This lightning seal could be improved if I change the last symbol from content to contain indefinitely. Content is too vague to be reliable, it might even end up activating when I don't need to use it, but contain indefinitely will allow me to choose when I use it and make it suit my situation. Urza's eyes narrowed suspiciously as she crossed her arms. And why does she do that? Why would she have to call you that? She questioned further, quickly becoming frustrated with his relaxed attitude. Naruto continued checking various seals in his book as he answered her question. From what she told me, that's how she was raised alive. He seeks a new master when the previous one dies and always pursues the strongest person within a certain age group. Surprisingly, he has not been ordered to enter any carnal act, so I guess she not only chooses the strongest person, but she doesn't care about doing them for her master. He paused in his reading to focus his eyes on her. If you want to know more about Setsuna and her relationship with me, I recommend you do it yourself. And with that said, Naruto casually raised his hand and caught Murahin by her waist. The sudden stop sent him hurtling forward, surprising him with the force Murahin had put into her leap and stumbling into a startled Urza. Before anything embarrassing could happen, Naruto sent a pulse of chakra to his feet to break his fall. Sticking to the wooden floor, Naruto quickly pulled Murahin onto his back and grabbed Urza with his left hand, being careful to avoid any damage to his sealing book. He didn't want to be responsible for all the damage a careless mistake could cause. Murahin blinked in confusion as she found herself resting on Naruto's back instead of feeling her feet embedded in it. In the bowels of her rival. The confusion lasted briefly before her mind reached the fact that there was an opportunity right in front of her. Without pausing to think of anything else, the fairy tale demon immediately wrapped her arms around his chest and pressed her blossoming bust against his back as she discreetly rubbed his hard muscles. Oh wow, they feel so strong and powerful. I want to stay like this forever, she thought to herself as her fingers trailed across his chest. A smile grew on her face when she felt a hard bulge and wasted no time in painfully grasping it with her fingers. Atomic twister. She screamed as she violently twisted his nipples with a brute force that made her feared within the guild. Yaerg. Naruto yelled as he felt her nails dig into his anatomy. Most would think that since he survived the assimilation jutsu, anything else would be nothing more than a mosquito bite. Well, that was true, but Naruto barely he had been attacked in that area before. As such, that area was a little more sensitive than he would have liked. He jerked violently, accidentally causing her to tighten her grip as she resisted. Setsuna, who had been watching them as they talked with Lisanna, decided she should help her master. Using a burst of pure speed, she weaved her way through the crowd, leaping from the shoulders of the other members and the furniture, and struck the white-haired girl's sides with a few lightning-fast blows. Marahan heard an uncharacteristic squeal as she released him and rubbed her sides, landing easily on her feet. She turned to see Setsuna staring at her and frowned as she took a step forward. "What was that for, idiot? Can't I stand you getting all chubby with Naruto-kun?" She teased, intentionally adding the kun suffix in an attempt to enrage the Uchiha level head. She received a hard smack on the head from Urza, who had a mark on her forehead while her cheeks were slightly flushed. "That's what you get for acting like a psychopath. Now apologize to Naruto-san," she demanded. The blonde hadn't told her anything but the truth and she wanted their friendship to start fresh. What better way to do that than to defend him in his time of need? Before Marahan could retort, she stiffened as she felt two strong arms wrap around her stomach and grab her developing breasts. Raising an eyebrow, she turned to point with a satisfied smile at Urza and Setsuna. "Wow, not even an hour and you want to do such naughty things to me? At least you have good taste in women." She laughed as she placed her hands over his, pushing them closer to her breasts. She didn't know whether she should be pleased that Naruto wanted to touch her growing B-cups or angry that he had touched them without her permission, but the kai she felt emanating from the blonde behind her didn't reassure her at all. In fact, she felt unusually frightened because she could see the terrified faces of the other mages in front of her, the slight trembling of Setsuna's body, and the wide, frightened eyes of Lisanna and Urza. Damn it, even Natsu and Gray had stopped fighting and were huddled together, their arms wrapped around each other, while Happy was nowhere to be seen. "Mirage-on, that wasn't very nice," Naruto's voice breathed into her ear, temporarily sending a pleasant jolt of electricity running down her spine. That's why she swallowed hard as she felt her fingers tremble. "I'm going to show you that reward." She had a bad feeling about this. Itsa bad. Double entry, Twister. He roared as his fingers gripped her nipples, pinching hard enough to earn a painful scream from the fairy tale demon. Kia. Marahan screamed as she felt pain explode from her sensitive nipples. Literally leaping out of his grasp, she slid away from the blonde, her eyes wide, her hands clutching her chest. "Why you pinched my nipples? What the hell?" She nearly screamed as she pointed a trembling finger at him. Naruto just chuckled, his bangs casting a shadow over his eyes that heightened the chilling situation. "You ask why? I'm not the kind of person who just takes whatever you serve me. The next time you try something like that again, I won't hesitate to do the same to you, Mira-chan." A Hanyu mask appeared right behind the boy's face, a deep, terrifying voice echoing with Naruto's to produce a positively creepy sound. The mask was black and had 4 elongated wheat-like white markings, 2 stopping at the forehead and the other 2 extending past the eyes and teeth, past the chin. There were also small markings that resembled a heart, but with the top and bottom open, extending from the inner corners of its eyes. It had no eyes. What truly frightened everyone, as well as the enraged Setsuna, was the terrified, yet fearful, look on Marahan's face. Naruto was already more scared than Urza, but being able to scare the dreaded demon of fairy tale. That was bad news. Makarov, who had been calmly observing the events unfolding before him from his position on the stairs, let out a giggle. "That kid's going to be a real womanizer by the time he turns 15, makes me wonder how long it'll take him to get a fan club." Deciding it was time to intervene to prevent further disturbances, Makarov leaped down the stairs and landed right in front of Naruto, who let his kai out until there was no trace of it anywhere. Grimacing, Naruto removed Samehada from the floor and ignored it with a grumbling complaint. "What are you doing here? Don't you have any more paperwork to attend to?" he questioned as he strapped Samehada to his back. Makarov dismissed the question. "To be honest, I was just watching your little bonding moment back there and I was wondering if you'd be interested in joining our guild." He paused to take a puff of smoke from his pipe. "In fact, Fairy Tail has been considered a popular choice for mages because we've produced many spectacular mages throughout history. However, my grandson Laxus has a point about the need for fresh blood in the guild. Fairy Tail hasn't been producing many notable mages in recent years. Aside from a few special individuals, most mages only manage to reach Class A. Class S mages have become even rarer than before, and from what you say about your abilities, you could easily reach that level. Hell, you might even be the guild's first SS class member," he declared without blinking, his voice conveying the strength of his belief. "Will you join us, Naruto, Setsuna? The guild is more than just a place for mages to work. It's also a big family and I'm sure everyone would love for you to join," he asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow. If the guild is a big family, doesn't that mean someone who joins the board is immediately zoned out by the family? If that's the case, so life must suck for all the adult members, he asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Everyone was to blame, and Setsuna was the exception, since she too had wondered about it, and Makarov stood up, muttering about the young man and how they had been overexposed these days. There's no policy preventing intimate relationships from occurring, so you don't have to worry about that, Makarov assured him. The only policy we have that you should take note of is our policy against murder. His eyes turned cold and commanding, no longer projecting the image of a grandfather figure. Naruto had to admit that Makarov's guild mode was almost identical to the cage mode he had seen Bachan use. If there's no other option for your survival, I wouldn't mind if you killed your enemies. However, if you intentionally kill someone in cold blood, you will be immediately expelled from the guild and charged a hefty fine. Depending on the severity of the judges, you could spend at least 2 years and at most the rest of your life in prison. Naruto nodded solemnly. Don't worry about that. Setsuna and I won't kill unless we have no other choice. It's a shame I didn't include Samui, Konan, and Anko on that list, he thought to himself. After all, a seasoned ninja always kept their options open. Urza stepped forward, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. So you plan to join us, huh? Well, expect my challenge after you've secured your lodgings. I look forward to crossing swords with you, Uzumaki Naruto. She declared, resting her hands on her hips. Natsu's head practically burst into flames at the thought of someone as strong as him standing there to challenge him. Oh man, I've been lit, baby. He turned his head toward Lisanna, who was standing next to her sister. Lisanna-chan, I'm going to fight him. Wish me luck. Natsu, wait. Lisanna yelled, trying to get him to stop. Unfortunately, hey Blondie. I challenge you to a fight. Right here, right now. The pink-haired boy declared, a huge grin plastered across his face. Naruto glared at him, paled, and asked a question that popped into his head. Is that your natural hair color? Because I really don't think pink is your thing. Have you ever tried dyeing red or black? Naruto sweated as the kid's head burst into flames once again. The first time it happened, he thought it was just his imagination causing that image. Apparently, this guy used fire. Huh. Natsu's display ended as a gigantic fist slammed into him, earning a low hiss from Gray. No fire breath, you managed to stay awake this time. Whoop-de-bucking do, you could almost taste the sarcasm in his voice. Makarov continued grumbling as he dispelled his Titan magic spell, and his arm returned to its normal size. Take your silly fight out of the guild. I haven't finished paying for all the necessary repairs from the last time you fought here. But first, Naruto and Setsuna need to officially join the guild. Go see Lisanna over there so she can officially induct you. He gestured to the girl standing next to Murahin, who could only be his sister, and went back to his office. As he approached the girl, Naruto gave her a smile. Why, hello. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and the lady next to me is Uchiha Setsuna. Lisanna smiled at the two of them as she led them to the end of the bar. Nice to meet you, Naruto-san. I'm Lisanna Strauss, Mirani's little sister. If you don't mind me asking, what made you accept Master Makarov's offer? She asked as she began rummaging through a small drawer. First of all, you guys seem great and it would be wonderful to live with you. Second, I don't expect any other guild to accept a new member, so I decided to take advantage of this opportunity while it was still open. Finally, Setsuna and I don't have a place to stay. Lisanna nodded as she removed a seal with a fairy tale emblem in the center. Okay, where would you like your mark? She asked as she held it up. I'd like it on the back of my left hand, Setsuna announced, pulling her hand out from under her cloak and presenting it to Lisanna. I'd like it to be black, please, she added as an afterthought. Barely a minute later, Setsuna was admiring her new tattoo. Turning to Naruto, Lisanna lifted the seal once more. So, where do you want it, Naruto? Naruto shrugged. I could also have it in the same place as Setsuna, not original, but I don't really mind. But you have it black with a crimson outline. Of course. She sang. Placing the seal on her left hand, a pulse of magic soon left the desired imprint on the blonde shinobi's hand. Flexing his hand a couple of times, Naruto gave Lisanna another eye smile. Thank you so much for that. It looks really nice. He praised, affectionately stroking her hair. Lisanna blushed slightly as he pulled his hand away, a pout forming on her face. Oh, don't look so annoyed. You should be used to how young you look. She just pouted harder and let out a snort. Why am I annoyed, she muttered as she received an order of 3 beers. Sorry, Naruto, but I have to get back to work. Try not to kill my husband, okay? Naruto blinked. You? Husband? You mean the guy with the pink hair? How did that happen? You're obviously not old enough to get married. He questioned. I'll explain when I'm not so busy. Goodbye. But that said, she disappeared into the crowd of mages. Closing his eyes with Setsuna, Naruto nodded for a minute. Understanding what he was saying, Setsuna started walking toward him while touching the jar containing Sasuke's eyes. With their upcoming fight, it would be a good opportunity to get some information about his new eyes. The Dairy Tail grounds Natsu was literally vibrating with excitement as he waited for Naruto to arrive so they could begin their fight. Happy had appeared a little while before and was once again eating a fish while watching Natsu prepare for his fight. Gray had decided to come see Natsu get his ass kicked as well as get an idea of what Naruto could do. Urza and Murahin also showed up, wanting to see what Naruto could do in a fight, though Murahin had a more personal reason to watch. What's costing Naruto so much? I want to fight him, damn it. Maybe you should calm down until he comes, Natsu Happy said, still managing to speak clearly despite his mouth being full of fish. Urza turned to see Murahin staring into space, muttering words she could barely make out. She caught the words Naruto-kun all mine and those bitches, and quickly broke out in a sweat. From what she knew of Murahin, the white-haired demon would probably try to force Naruto to fight her to prove her superiority. If she lost, which Urza was sure would be the case, she would simply continue fighting him until she won. Naruto-san's life is about to get interesting. A small crowd had gathered around, listening to the news of the budding mage Salamander, about to fight a new guild member. From what they'd heard, the guildmaster himself had proclaimed that the new recruit was capable of overpowering an S-class mage, and that proclamation had piqued their interest. After about 3 minutes, Naruto emerged from the gates, followed by Setsuna, the latter finally shedding her traveling cloak. She was quite agile, her form an interesting blend of strength, speed, and elegance. She wasn't so muscular as to detract from her beauty, nor was her body beautiful, but rather delicate. Her developing curves were accentuated by the tight-fitting clothing she wore. Black pants that showcased her beautiful legs, a purple sash that secured her sword, and a revealing navy blue robe with a large hem in the front that exposed her arms, back, the sides of her well-endowed breasts, and her midriff. Many of the young women in the crowd fought off feelings of inadequacy when they finally got a good look at Setsuna's chest. Most of them were B-cups, with the notable exceptions of Urza, Murahin, Kana, Evergreen, and a few others who range from a large B to a small C, but Setsuna was already a large C cup. Stopping directly in front of Natsu, Naruto crossed his arms. So, you ready to have your ass handed to you? Natsu grinned in response. Just cut the chat and show me what you've got. Actions speak louder than words, you know. He declared as he bent down, thanking his lucky stars that he'd gotten a bite earlier. Naruto didn't respond to that and decided to get the event underway. Kuchius no jutsu. He shouted as he slammed his hand into the ground. A puff of smoke obscured the view for a brief second before a gust of wind revealed Naruto wielding a gunbai, or war fanatic. The fan was purple with black trim and a black tomo, connected to black chains that ran up his right sleeve. Natsu didn't know what the blonde planned to do with that fan, nor did he recognize any kind of re-equip magic that would occur in that way, but he didn't really care. Charging toward the blonde at considerable speed, the young dragon slayer drew his hand back as he cast his spell. Fire Dragon Iron Fist. A decent-sized fireball ignited above his closed fist as it continued its path toward the motionless ninja, pumping more power into the attack to defeat him in one blow. Naruto only shifted his stance slightly as he waited for Natsu to get closer. Using the Sharingan seemed a bit much even for Naruto, but he really wanted to see how much stronger his eye techniques had become. I'll toy with him a bit before using them. I just hope he doesn't overexert himself trying to defeat me. Nodding to himself, Naruto blocked Natsu's punch with ease, startling Natsu. Calmly tightening his grip on the fan, Naruto stared into Natsu's eyes. Uchiha Geshi, Uchiha Return. The flick of his wrist sent the fire mage flying backward with impressive force through several trees, finally skidding to a stop several feet away. Slicing through a chain of one-handed seals, Naruto unleashed another jutsu. Kaiten. Mkakuk no Jutsu. As Naruto launched a massive fireball at Natsu, he was surprised to see the boy make no move to avoid the attack. He was even more shocked when he saw Natsu open his mouth and swallow the fire that lapped at his body, devouring it like food. Wow, your fire tastes really good. It's almost as good as Igneal's fire. He exclaimed. He clenched his fists as he crouched down with a smile on his face once more, he said, here it comes. Fire Dragon's Roar. A gigantic torrent of flames was exhaled by the mage, hurtling toward the shinobi at great speed. Water Release. Water Blast. A torrent of water erupted from his mouth, generating a massive explosion of steam as the wall of water and the flame collided. Losing his focus in surprise at seeing Naruto use water attacks, Natsu's spell ended abruptly. As he peered through the steam, searching for Naruto's whereabouts, he jumped when he heard his voice within the vapor. Sorry, Natsu, but I'm going to finish this. Taste and eat this. Amaterasu. Black flames shaped like a roaring dragon swept toward Natsu with ferocious speed and cruelty. Barely managing to dodge the onslaught, Natsu inhaled some of the strange fire to see what it tasted like. Meanwhile, the Amaterasu flames dissipated, arcing into the sky away from the crowd. Within the thick steam, Naruto grinned as he watched Natsu eat the flames with his Mangekyo Sharingan. Bad move, Natsu. Curiosity killed the cat, and you're going to learn that right now. Natsu's cheeks puffed out as he struggled to maintain his composure. The flames he had eaten were doing something to him, making him feel as if he had ingested some kind of poison. A painful sensation in his stomach broke what little control he had over his agitation, and he vomited large amounts of fire onto the ground, his stomach churning in its quest to expel the foreign substance. What's going on? What did that fire do to me? Water release. Water dragon technique. A low-powered water dragon formed using the water vapor in the atmosphere and crashed into the vomited flames, preventing a forest fire from starting. Don't worry about the flames, Natsu, I've already cancelled the technique. You should feel better soon. Natsu looked up to see Naruto emerging from the steam, his gunbai slung over his shoulder as he walked toward the fallen mage. Just as he'd said, he could feel the burning sensation in his stomach simmering into a mild discomfort. Standing up, Natsu glared at the blonde. What the hell was with that fire? Why did it hurt when I have the lungs of a dragon? Piling that bit of information aside for later, Naruto decided to answer his question. If enemy shinobi could monologue about their life experiences and techniques in battle, why couldn't he? I'm not really sure I can explain it, but I guess the reason was your limited experience with fire. Amaterasu's flames can burn continuously for at least 7 days and 7 nights, so I guess the strain it put on your body was too much for you to handle. Naruto began manipulating chakra once more as Natsu invoked his fire magic to seal his hands. Let's settle this. Rasengan Barrage. Naruto charged, a spiraling sphere of pure chakra in each hand. Alright. Fire Dragon's iron fists. Natsu roared as he shot toward the approaching shinobi. They paid no attention to the cheering crowd. Their focus was on the inevitable clash about to occur. With a loud, incoherent shout, Natsu thrust his hands toward Naruto, hoping to slam his fists into the blonde. Ducking under Natsu's savage blows, Naruto easily slipped through his guard and struck the 2 Rasengans inside. Luckily for Natsu, Naruto had only pumped enough chakra to knock the fire mage unconscious. Otherwise, he would have been destroyed by the combined force of the A-rank jutsu. As Natsu felt the world go black and his chest scream in agony, he felt a smile appear on his lips. Naruto, I'll become stronger than this, strong enough to beat even you one day. Until then, let's spar a little longer. It was a lot of fun. As Natsu was about to fall to the ground, he was caught by Naruto and gently carried away by the shinobi. It could be because I see myself in you, it could be because you have the drive and determination to become stronger, it could even be for a reason I don't yet understand, but I feel like you're going to play a big part in the years to come. Naruto thought as he draped Natsu's arm over his shoulder and began to walk toward the crowd. I'll do my best to make sure all of you grow up strong. Strong enough to get through life's trials, my friend. He smiled as he handed Natsu over to a worried Lisanna, assuring her that he was alright. Makarov, watching the entire fight through a crystal ball, let a smile grace his aged face. It seemed Naruto was already settling into his life as a member of Fairy Tail.as. Natsu felt the world go black and his chest scream in agony, a smile crept across his lips. Naruto, I'll become stronger than this, strong enough to beat even you someday. Until then, let's spar a little longer. It was a lot of fun. Just as Natsu was about to collapse to the ground, Naruto caught him and gently led him away by the shinobi. It could be because I see myself in you, it could be because you have the drive and determination to become stronger, it could even be for a reason I don't yet understand, but I feel you're going to play a big part in the years to come. Naruto thought as he draped Natsu's arm over his shoulder and began to walk toward the crowd. I'll do my best to make sure all of you grow up strong. Strong enough to get through life's trials, my friend. He smiled as he handed Natsu over to a worried Lisanna, assuring her he was alright. Makarov, observing the entire fight through a crystal ball, let a smile grace his aged face. It seemed Naruto was finally settling into his life as a member of Fairy Tail.as. Natsu felt the world go black and his chest scream in agony, a smile crept across his lips. Naruto, I'll become stronger than this, strong enough to beat even you someday. Until then, let's spar a little longer. It was a lot of fun. Just as Natsu was about to collapse to the ground, Naruto caught him and gently led him away by the shinobi. It could be because I see myself in you, it could be because you have the drive and determination to become stronger, it could even be for a reason I don't yet understand, but I feel you're going to play a big part in the years to come. Naruto thought as he draped Natsu's arm over his shoulder and began to walk toward the crowd. I'll do my best to make sure all of you grow up strong. Strong enough to get through life's trials, my friend. He smiled as he handed Natsu over to a worried Lisanna, assuring her he was alright. Makarov, observing the entire fight through a crystal ball, let a smile grace his aged face. It seemed Naruto was finally settling into his life as a member of Fairy Tail. Chapter 5. Change in Destiny. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime manga that appear in this fic of mine. If I did, well, you'd know. Makarov sighed deeply as she sank into her seat, the comfort of her beloved chair, offering some relief from the headache that was developing. She closed her eyes and tilted her pipe so that it hung precariously in her mouth, allowing herself to be swept away by the calm of the moment and feeling grateful for the rare opportunity to simply relax without the constant challenges that life threw her way. So much for taking it easy, she thought, still in that zen-like state of relaxation. The bird song in the afternoon made her lips tremble. At this rate, it will be decades before I can pass the mantle of guildmaster to someone else. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and Makarov's peace was disturbed by the stubborn thoughts in her head regarding the young Namikaze. She had been watching the small sparring match he and Natsu had had, curious enough to see how shinobi fought. The results were quite impressive. Makarov was astute enough to see that Naruto had been holding back against the young dragon slayer. If I were to follow what he told me, Natsu wouldn't pose much of a challenge, nor would many of the mages here. He raised his eyebrows thoughtfully as he recalled the last jutsu Naruto had used on Natsu. What was that again? Rasenrangan. He muttered. From what he'd seen, it looked like a swirling ball of energy that had enough power to seriously damage its opponents. His people must have been something special if they can do things like that. He murmured. In his opinion, the shinobi system he'd learned from Naruto didn't suit him. Using children as young as Lisana on jobs that could end up being their last. Inbreeding to ensure the continuation of a bloodline boundary, despite the risks involved. Constant warfare as a result of the smallest reactions between two hidden villages and human greed. And to think he's only just entered adolescence. It's as if ninjas have been preparing for S-class jobs since the beginning of their careers. He opened his eyes and lifted his head from his reclining position to see the latest headache-inducing event he'd received. On his desk was a report he'd been writing, to be sent to the Magic Council as soon as he finished. As a member of the 10 Wizard Saints, he was obligated to send them reports on any unusual activity that occurred near their guilds. And Aknologia's appearance was definitely unusual. He wasn't going to mention his title in the report. After all, the less they knew, the better. However, Naruto's actions were sure to catch the council members' attention. After all, who had tamed a dragon before? Who could use space-time techniques like he did? Such a powerful and unknown ability would draw their eyes to him, whether to observe him and try to gain his loyalty or to find a way to destroy him. Makarov frowned as he continued to stare at the report. What should I do? The entire guild and the civilians have already seen Naruto transport Aknologia to another dimension, and it would be disastrous if the report didn't match the witnesses' accounts. He continued to stare at the report for many minutes, lost in thought. After 10 minutes of silent contemplation, a spark appeared in his eyes as a smile spread across his face. Well, why didn't I think of this before? This will definitely satisfy them and keep them off my back long enough for me to have some peace. With that, the guildmaster began to write enthusiastically. Guild Hall Natsu. Don't die yet. I still need someone to catch my fish for me. Happy screamed as he flew over the injured boy, comical tears streaming down his head in an odd way. He continued screaming, oblivious to the fact that Natsu was alive, awake, and staring at him with a few marks forming on his head. Gray, who was standing next to the duo, chose that moment to add his own comment. Don't worry, Happy. I'm sure we can find another glorified couple to cook your meals for you. Natsu was in his face faster than most people could blink, pressing his forehead against the ice mage. Would you mind repeating that again, Snowman? Gray pushed his forehead against Natsu's, his gaze and demeanor suddenly aggressive. You heard me the first time, idiot. What are you going to do about it? Natsu pushed back with equal vigor, flames appearing within his eye sockets. I'm going to kick your ass, that's what I'm going to do. And with a roar, another fight broke out between the two teenage mages while everyone else carried on with their business. Natsu, stop this instant. You're going to reopen your wounds. Lisana shouted, nervously wringing her hands as she saw Natsu take a hard hit from Gray. After watching the two continue fighting despite being dry, Lisana began to get angry. Natsu. Stop now. The boys continued rolling around, throwing punches and kicks anywhere they could reach. Lisana ran her fingers through her hair and growled as she advanced toward them. One of these days, I swear he's going to get in trouble for that habit. She muttered. Watching the interaction between the three was Naruto, leaning against a stool with a glass of sake in his hand. Observing the two boys, he felt a brief wave of nostalgia for the days when Team 7 was still together. If he had to assign the trio characteristics, he'd say Gray would be the equivalent of Sasuke, always welcoming any opportunity to prove he was superior to Natsu. Lisana would be the one to break up the fight, something Sakura always did, though Lisana probably wouldn't be predisposed to either of them. Natsu reminded Naruto of himself. The hot-headed member who was loud and seized every opportunity he had to try and beat his opponent. He snapped out of his reverie when he saw Lisana's hand transform into a long, multicolored tentacle as she reached the duo, who were currently in a headlock. Both of you let go. Now. With a particularly ferocious thud, Natsu and Gray let out high-pitched squeals as their jellyfish tentacles sent a series of shockwaves through their bodies. Both ended their blocks in favor of spamming moves, which made them look even more comical than when they were fighting. Naruto laughed as he watched Lisana munch on Natsu and Gray, taking a sip of her alcoholic beverage, despite the fact that her mask was in the way. What he had gleaned from Kakashi's recollections was that the material used to adapt the mask somehow made it possible to consume food and drinks without having to remove it. The details of the material were incomplete, as Kakashi was quite young when he started using it and wasn't in the mood to hear them, but it explained why the man never seemed to remove the mask whenever he treated Naruto ramen. So, that time we tried to get him to take off the mask, he must have been watching out for us. Things were fun back then. The guild hall was noticeably quieter than before, as most of the mages had come in for job applications. Apparently, the afternoon requests were much more rewarding than the mornings and also seemed to be greater in number. At the moment, only about 20 members remained in the room, Setsuna and he included. Speaking of Setsuna, she was talking to another woman in a corner, seeming quite interested in something the woman was showing her. Judging from the brunette's animated gestures, as well as the glimpse she managed to get, it was something related to cards. After watching them for a few more moments, Naruto remembered the girl's name. That's Kana Alberona. I wonder what she and Setsuna-chan are talking about. Naruto-san, is something wrong? Lisana asked as she dragged a calm Natsu to her seat next to the blonde. Naruto looked at her and gestured for her to come closer. She seemed uncertain at first. She was undoubtedly thinking about something other than what he was about to do to her. After a moment she decided to grant his request and approached him. Ayano, it's there. A sharp blow to her forehead caused the girl to gasp in surprise as she stumbled backward, her eyes blinking rapidly at the action. Naruto grinned at the adorably confused look on her face, as Natsu seemed torn between roasting Naruto alive and leaving him with Lisana. That girl could be quite terrifying sometimes. In case you're wondering, that was for attaching a suffix to my name. Just call me Naruto. Adding san makes me feel old. Naruto mentally chuckled at her statement. To answer your question, I was wondering how accommodation is handled. Is there somewhere guild members are housed, or do they have to pay for their own lodging in town? Lisana's eyes lit up. Well, since you're new here, I didn't really expect you to know this, but the guild only serves as a place where job applications are displayed and taken. There's no free accommodation here, so I suggest you take on some jobs and earn some money before you even think about looking for an apartment, she said. Naruto only managed to hide his snort. Parent to live somewhere? No, thanks, he'd done enough of that as a kid, and that option was definitely off his list. I'll keep that in mind, he said, his thoughts wandering to other matters. So, how are requests handled? Are they usually done by individuals, or can they be done in groups? Fellas, who had been strangely quiet during the exchange, floated in front of Naruto. Let me explain. Although all the guild members are allied, some members who get along really well get together and form teams within the guild. That way, jobs that might be difficult for one person can be done by a team. Naruto nodded at Happy's explanation. Cool, that sounds a bit like what I used to do at home. He ignored the curious glances he received from Lisana and Natsu and stood up from his seat. Winking at the girl, Naruto started walking towards the application board. Well, I'm going to find something interesting to do. See ya. He waved to me. Natsu happily jumped up behind the blonde. Stop, Naruto. What about you, me, and me? Happy go. The vibrant dragon slayer froze and began to sweat rapidly as a delicate hand gripped his shoulder with a strength that defied the image hands gave of a fragile girl. An oppressive weight fell on his shoulders as the temperature around him dropped to chilling levels, and Natsu could swear the air around him was darkening with every passing second. His head began to turn robotically toward the source of it all as if it were an instinctive reaction rooted within him to confront the demon before it died. Lisana's eyes were closed and a beautiful smile appeared on her face, making her angelic features even more pronounced. In contrast, the evil aura she exuded made her appearance all the more disconcerting. Natsu-kun, what did I say about you overexerting yourself? Naruto smiled as he walked away from the two, getting closer to the request board. Well. Looks like love is in the air for those two, or at least for Lisana. Stopping in front of his target, Naruto let his eyes wander over the various requests pinned to the mahogany board. Let's see now. Find a magic bracelet. Too easy. Read someone's love horoscope. No thanks, please. Hunt a volcano demon. Naruto kept his eye on that particular request for a moment. Let's put that in the seriously considering category for now. Looking for a job already? Naruto turned to see Murahin approaching him with amusement on her face. She stopped beside him and smiled. If you'd like, you can partner with Elfman and me. We're heading over to review this particular application. She handed him the application sheet and crossed her arms as he read it. Naruto's forehead tilted slightly as he reviewed the job application. So we're going to deal with a demon infestation in a place called Shiratsum Town. Well, I can break something. His eyes widened slightly as he read the reward for the job. 2,200,000 jewels for every demon we can deal with. That's certainly an incentive. He looked up from the sheet and met Mira's gaze. Not to sound ungrateful, but why exactly do you want me to accompany you? Shouldn't you partner with someone whose abilities you know rather than an unknown factor? Marahan gave him a small sneer. The only other person I'd choose would be Lysana, but she was very busy last week and I don't want her to get stressed. Besides, from that fight with Natsu, I can see you're capable of holding your own in a fight. She replied, a hint of irritation bleeding into her voice. Also, as your senpai in the guild, I have to show you the ropes of how we fairy tale wizards operate. Naruto felt a bead of sweat form. I didn't ask for a senpai. I don't know, maybe Urza-sen would be a better choice. She seems more reliable. He blinked as a mark formed on Marahan's face. Huh. Marahan's words were low and cold, but Naruto could easily hear them. That ugly scoundrel already went to do a stupid job, so you'll have to stick with me. Besides, I'm much better than that uptight cunt. She mocked him. Her blue eyes were cold but shrewd as she looked at him. Seeing him open his mouth once more, Marahan quickly interrupted him. Alright, enough talk. I'll see you at the gate in half an hour and you'd better not be late. With that, she quickly left. Naruto sighed as he read the request once more. Well, I need some money. He paused as a question formed in his mind. And who is Elfman? Milk-tailed Gates. Marahan walked through the guild gates with barely concealed irritation, while Elfman simply leaned against them, arms crossed, gazing up at the sky, waiting for the third member. The middle brother was a tall young man with the same messy bowl-cut white hair and blue eyes as Marahan and Lysana. His skin was tanned, unlike his sister's pale complexion, and he wore a dark blue jacket with a purplish-blue interior, fastened by a row of large buttons, with similar buttons on the back of the sleeves and a zipper down the front. The high collar was open. The back of his jacket was adorned with a large light kanji character that read the greatest, and the jacket itself appeared to be worn over a light red shirt, sometimes seemingly replaced by an A-line shirt covered in many vertical stripes. Elfman's outfit was completed with loose trousers that matched his jacket, held up by a simple belt, and traditional Japanese Jetta sandals, fastened by bands the same color as the blisters on his jacket. He waited patiently while his older sister kept pace, her murderous murmurs floating in his ear and causing a quick smile to grace his lips. I've never seen her interested in someone before. It must be something to get Mirani's attention. Arg. Where is that bum? He should have been here an hour ago. Marahan's patience finally snapped and the young teenager began to unleash a string of curses and words that were enough to make Elfman, the most manly man in the guild, shudder with compassion as he listened to her violent descriptions of what she would do to Naruto. Am I late? Naruto asked as he appeared in a swirl of leaves. He dodged an accusation from the angry girl and maneuvered so that every blow she threw was easily deflected without harming any unfortunate bystanders. You're late, asshole. Well, the thing is what? I got lost on the road to hell, so I backed up and tried again. Only the next time, I ran into a black cat, so I had to walk around Fiori 7 times to make sure I didn't have any bad luck. Marahan babbled furiously at the ridiculous story Naruto was telling her and renewed her angry tirade. Liar. Shiratsum Town. The three of them stopped in front of a huge mansion. Naruto looked around the place with narrowed eyes. Around the palace were a series of slender trees sitting casually on the grass, while behind it were a small lake and a huge rock formation. As they approached the gates, Naruto started a conversation with Elfman while Marahan walked away from the blonde. She was undoubtedly still annoyed by his lateness. So, what kind of magic do you use? Naruto probed as they headed towards Marahan. Well, my sisters and I use takeover magic. Seeing the confusion in Naruto's eyes, he elaborated. Takeover allows the user to take the power of a creature or person and use it to fight. It can increase the caster's power, strength and speed, sometimes adding a new ability like flying or swimming. He refrained from exploring the other aspects of his magic and entered the building with Marahan. Naruto noticed the reaction to the topic of his magic and followed the siblings. As he made his way through the mansion to the room where they were supposed to meet the client, he couldn't help but admire the structure. This guy must obviously be loaded. They soon entered a room, which Naruto recognized as the library. It had all its walls segmented into long vertical sections, adorned with bookshelves filled with books, some of which sported ladders to reach their upper shelves. A large desk, complete with a chair and some pens, was present, along with a light semicircular sofa, which in its hollow part housed a round table and had 2 round lamps nearby on one side. 2 more large lamps sporting small spheres secured by cords hung from special hollow parts in the ceiling, which they were covered in square tiles. Near the door leading into the room was a wardrobe, flanked by another, smaller desk and a chair. Seated on the sofa was the client. He was a short, squat, and rather unattractive man with thin arms and legs. He sported a curled mustache that protruded directly from his nostrils and a massive wavy hair atop his round head. He wore a formal black suit, his jacket fastened with a large gold button and adorned with a decorative red flower. Underneath his jacket was a white-collared shirt and a blue tie. Naruto decided he didn't mind entertaining a man in the near future. After he had bled all his resources dry, of course. Boy oyo, it seems the fairy tale wizards are as unpunctual as they are undisciplined. I've been waiting for you to arrive for the last hour. Sweet Kami, even his voice annoyed Naruto. As if that wasn't bad enough, he was getting Mira-chan's evil eye. We were stopped, thanks to this idiot. Murahin pointed at Naruto, who nodded in acknowledgement. Your job application stated that you were suffering from a demon infestation, but you never specified what kind of demon you had. Elfman also seemed interested, while Naruto shrugged. After all, what did it matter? After dealing with Kurama and the other Biju, anything else was a piece of cake. The Shiratsu Mountains ARG. I can't believe that bastard had the nerve to exaggerate the application. Did he have a freaking Vulcan problem? Naruto watched in bewilderment as Murahin vented her frustration on an unfortunate rock, pummeling the poor thing with angry blows that shattered rapidly. He turned to Elfman, who was watching his sister with a nervous smile, and asked the question in his mind. Is this how she always gets, or is there something I'm missing? Elfman only chuckled nervously as Murahin finished reducing the rocks to rubble, her anger finally subsiding. I can't say for sure, but she seemed to be anticipating this request rather badly. Discovering that demons are just Vulcans, I suppose I'd be annoyed, too. He replied, scratching his head at the thought. Naruto sighed as a breeze began to pick up. A wary feeling spread through him as his eyes narrowed. I have a bad feeling about this, he thought to himself. I can't say for sure, but she seemed to be anticipating this request quite negatively. Discovering that demons are just Vulcans, I suppose I'd be annoyed too. He replied, scratching his head in thought. Naruto sighed as a breeze began to pick up. A wary feeling spread through him as his eyes narrowed. I have a bad feeling about this, he thought to himself. I can't say for sure, but she seemed to be anticipating this request quite negatively. Discovering that demons are just Vulcans, I suppose I'd be annoyed too. He replied, scratching his head in thought. Naruto sighed as a breeze began to pick up. A wary feeling spread through him as his eyes narrowed. I have a bad feeling about this, he thought to himself. Chapter 6. Taking on Problems Part 1. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime or manga that appears in this literary work. Naruto and Elfman headed toward the less densely populated southern sector of the Shiratsu Mountains, while Murahin covered the western sector. Since the area wasn't very large, only about 2 hectares, they weren't really worried about getting lost. If they happened to lose their way, Naruto could use an animal summoning to track their scent. That, or he could do it himself, but that would lead to some awkward questions he didn't want to answer just yet. Anyway, after a brief discussion among the trio, it was decided that Naruto would be accompanied by Elfman, since he wasn't familiar with the terrain. Naruto didn't mind at all. Elfman seemed like a nice person, and he wanted to meet another member of the guild besides those he'd met earlier that day. Besides, Elfman had camped in the area not too far back, making him the perfect guide. From what Naruto had seen of the mountains, there was almost no life in the area, and the atmosphere was quite dry. After a few moments of silence, aside from the rustling sounds as they passed through the vegetation, Naruto decided to start the conversation. So, Elfman, how long have you and your sisters been in Fairy Tail? He said casually as he formed a shadow clone a few meters behind them. That feeling he did not long ago was resurfacing, and Naruto had learned long ago that paranoia was useful for keeping more than a few shinobi alive into old age. Since Naruto had mastered most of his jutsu to the point where he could perform them with only 3 hand seals, it was relatively easy for a shinobi of his caliber to distract Elfman from noticing anything. The clone blended seamlessly into the background, its Rinnegan eyes feeding its creator as it scanned the surroundings. Elfman paused for a second before continuing down the path. Well, it really hasn't been that long since we joined the guild, he said, almost thoughtfully, as they searched for any sign of the Vulcans. I suppose we arrived about a year and a half ago. Back then, we weren't as good with magic as we are now, and our parents had passed away. We didn't have anywhere to go or a clue about how to control or manipulate magic. He paused to hop onto a rock and continued, then, when Mirani found out that Fairy Tail was the strongest guild, she convinced us to join. It also helped that Fairy Tail was the closest guild. He chuckled. Naruto nodded, avoiding the topic of his parents. So, out of curiosity, who exactly are the top players within the guild? Elfman gave him a nod of approval. Scanning the competition to see where you stand. That's good. I was hoping for another guildmate who thinks like a real man. Ignoring the curious glances Naruto was giving him, Elfman proceeded to lecture him on the mages who stood out within the guild. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up. From what I've heard, you beat Natsu fairly easily, so you're already better than a good portion of the guild. Now, Macau. Shiratsu Mountains, Marahin. Marahin frowned as she flew over the western sector of the location. Her large bat-like wings lifted her high into the sky with powerful flaps, giving her a perfect view of Shiratsum town. Normally, she would have enjoyed the peace and the view, but because of Duke Everlu's request, it only served to anger her. That damned prick, she made a mental note to respond to him. Perhaps I should blow up that mansion of his. A wicked glint appeared in her eyes as she imagined the look on his face. A flicker of movement jolted her from her reverie and she lunged down for a better view. Staying high enough to be hidden by the clouds, but low enough to have a good view, Marahin squinted as she spotted 3 forest vulcans leaping through the trees at decent speeds. They were all quite large, easily twice the size of any ordinary vulcan. Vulcans typically appeared to be large anthropomorphic monsters resembling primates. They possessed distinct facial features, elongated chins, protruding ears, and pointed heads that resembled a single horn on top. Vulcans had gigantic arms and, consequently, large hands attached to their muscular torsos. In comparison, they had a pair of smaller scale legs with long tails connected to the lower part of their torsos. After a few minutes of silent contemplation, she frowned when no plausible reason presented itself. What's going on here? Had she been more aware of her surroundings, she would have noticed a flying creature heading north to inform its master. Western sector, Naruto. Naruto muttered to himself as he thought about the strongest people in the guild. He knew Makarov was the strongest. He was the guild master, the one who looked after and protected everyone in the guild. How could he not be the strongest? The Titan magic elfman had described to him that it vividly reminded him of his own Akimichi body-expanding jutsu, although there were some differences between the two. Gray was also included on the list, though that had more to do with his potential than his current strength. He used ice magic, a caster-type magic that utilized the ice element. Gray used static ice make, a type of ice magic characterized by the creation of inanimate objects as weapons or by affecting the surrounding environment. However, when Naruto compared that to his own Hyoten Kekkei Genkai, it fell short. It wasn't that ice magic was weaker than Hyoten. Hyoten was superior simply because Naruto could create anything with it, while ice mages used static or dynamic ice. Vakao Konbolt was another magician Elfman had included on his list. The man was adept at using purple flare, a magic that allowed him to conjure flames that couldn't be extinguished by wind or water. He mentally snorted at that. I bet he could do that easily. The most prominent names that caught Naruto's attention were Laxus Dreyer, Makarov's grandson, and Gildert's Clive, the ace of Fairy Tail. According to Elfman's description, Laxus was a lightning mage considered one of the strongest of the younger generation and rumored to be a strong contender for the S-class exams. However, Laxus's attitude toward his classmates didn't impress Naruto at all. He sounded a bit like Danzo, which greatly annoyed Naruto. I'll have to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't cause any unnecessary trouble like that jerk did. Unfortunately, Elfman hadn't met Gildert's in person, so he couldn't say for sure what kind of magic he used. Various rumors circulated within the guild whenever his name was mentioned, making it nearly impossible to discern the precise details. Even so, almost everyone in the guild acknowledged Gildert's as the strongest. That meant his magic would be incredibly powerful and that he had considerable combat experience. Naruto vaguely wondered how Gildert's would fare against someone like the third Raikage. He probably wouldn't survive. Clearing his thoughts and refocusing on the task at hand, Naruto paused when Elfman stopped abruptly. Looking at the tall man, Naruto could see his eyes narrow and a smile spread across his face. Naruto-san, it seems we found them. He slowly crouched down as Naruto scanned the area until he finally spotted them. A dozen Gorians, some 20 meters ahead of them, were searching for something in the sparse vegetation. They acted as a pack, with 2 or 3 of them keeping watch for predators, while the rest searched for fruit and other food. Hey, Elfman, Naruto whispered as he silently approached. Do these Vulcans usually live in packs? While questioning his teammate, his shadow clone was silently creeping toward a particularly adventurous Gorian, who was at the farthest point from the rest of them. Elfman frowned slightly. No, they generally live alone. Some form groups, but even then, the most you'd expect would be 4. For many, forming a coalition makes no sense. He began gathering his magical energy as he flexed his right arm, his eyes fixed on the largest of the group. However, our job was to get rid of them, so all these questions aren't really relevant. He cracked his knuckles as his legs tensed, ready to burst through his cover and attack. Naruto shrugged as he too began to move toward them. Whatever you say, big guy. Do you mind if I handle the left flank? They might not be as big as the ones on your side, but since I need the experience, I'll let you handle the tougher ones. It didn't really matter whether he took the smaller ones or the larger ones. All he wanted to do was test the effects of his techniques on these creatures native to Earthland. Besides, he was also curious about Elfman's abilities. By letting him handle the stronger ones, he was more likely to get a good read on his fighting style than if Elfman took the smaller fry. Elfman smiled at him, obviously happy to be allowed to fight the strongest. Know your limits and take on challenges that aren't beyond your abilities like a real man. Thank you for putting your well-being in my hands. I will definitely protect you, because I am a real man. He charged into Gore's pack, their screams startling them as they stopped what they were doing and watched him charge toward the largest member. Beast arm. Black Bull. As Elfman leaped toward his target and withdrew his right hand, he focused a massive amount of magic into the limb. The arm transformed swiftly, turning the tanned human arm into a large black arm of an unknown beast, several times larger than Elfman's original. With a loud shout, Elfman slammed his enormous fists directly into Gorian's face. The beast's face crumpled momentarily before being sent flying with impressive force through a nearby tree. As it crashed through the vegetation, the others seemed to snap out of their trance-like states and began charging at it with various war cries. Beast arm. Iron Bull. This time, his left arm transformed into a massive metal fist, only slightly thinner than his right hand, and he charged toward the nearest Vulcans. Trapping them in a brutal clothesline that lifted them off their feet, Elfman managed to wrap his fingers around their damaged throats and hurl them one after another toward the rest of the group. He charged at them once more, his fists raised and ready to dish out some pain. Naruto sighed at his partner's rash actions, but attributed it to the recklessness that all Fairy Tail members seemed to exhibit. Lazily walking toward his victims, he casually formed 3 hand seals and activated a D-rank Jinjutsu on the nearest target. The Jinjutsu was designed to reverse all senses of direction. Up and down, left and right, as well as forward and backward, were reversed. However, it wasn't just their sense of direction that changed. The opponent's view, the direction of incoming attacks, and the locations of injuries were also reversed. A smile briefly appeared on his face as he sensed Sakasama no Sekai, inverted world take effect on the group. Since he was only testing them, Naruto didn't feel the need to kill them so quickly. Now that I know Jinjutsu still works, it's time to try ninjutsu on them. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't risk using his most lethal techniques while he was so close to Elfman. Strauss was a good man, albeit somewhat eccentric, but Naruto hadn't even known him for a day. Trust had to be established first before he could even consider sharing some of his secrets. He couldn't risk letting his battle prowess and techniques be overheard by the most unpleasant people in the world. While he liked Fairy Tail and his new guildmates, the fact that they liked to boast about their magic didn't sit well with him. Sure, within the guild, they were encouraged to share something about themselves to effectively complete team mission requests, but literally explaining what their magic did in front of other mages who were opposing them. That was no longer the case. After quickly deciding which jutsu to try, Naruto gathered his chakra as 3 Gorians stumbled toward him, panicked expressions on their faces, undoubtedly experiencing the unpleasant sensation of losing their sense of direction. Wind release. Great breakthrough. Unlike his previous life, he didn't attempt to shout out his techniques in battle. Like most of the more experienced shinobi he had absorbed, he usually remained silent while casting his jutsu. At the moment, there was no particular reason why he had reverted to his old habit. He simply felt like it. The Gorians were swept away by a powerful gust of wind that blew them completely away from the rest of their pack. Naruto had used only the bare minimum of chakra to activate the jutsu, but even so, the effects were impressive. Ignoring the damage caused to the surrounding area, Naruto went through 3 more hand seals. Doten Kekai. Dormed Mu, Earth Release Barrier. Prison of the Earth of Magnificent Nothingness. The earth rumbled as Naruto's chakra poured into it, forming a massive dome that exploded with the force of a bullet. Already disoriented by Naruto's Jinjutsu and the great breakthrough, the Vulcans were unprepared for the dome surrounding them and quickly found themselves trapped inside the dark, narrow confines of hardened earth. A sigh escaped Naruto's lips as he lazily closed the distance between himself and the dome. The final technique he was about to use was one he had only managed to learn because he had succeeded in recapturing Terumi Mei, the 5th Mizukage, as his animal path. As he approached the dome, he reduced the chakra flow in an area that caused the rock to loosen until it crumbled. Giving the captured monsters no chance, Naruto unleashed a cloud of corrosive mist that immediately began to corrode the earth from the dome. Inside, Naruto could hear the screams and cries of pain and terror as the Vulcans literally melted into goo. After blowing more mist for about half a minute, Naruto finally stopped when the sound completely faded away. Having completed his task, Naruto released the earth barrier and returned it to its original dust form. Paying no attention to the bloody remains of the Gorians, he turned and headed toward Elfman. Western Sector, Murahin. Murahin growled as she not very gently slammed the last Gorian straight through the earth. Around her lay dozens of Gorians on the ground, unconscious or dead. Though not particularly bloody, Murahin had nonetheless been brutal in her annihilation of the herd. Some had limbs stuck painfully at odd angles, others had half their bodies covered in deep burns, and some even had deep wounds bleeding alarmingly into their fur, staining it bright red. Warahan released the unfortunate Gorian from her grasp and slumped slightly in small relief, absent-mindedly wiping away the bloodstains that had fallen on her. Fortunately, she had only had to resort to the partial takeover spell in their fight. She might have managed to achieve full takeover before her brothers, but she was nowhere near mastering it. Not only was it depleting her magical reserves, but she couldn't use it for more than 2 fights without putting a great strain on her body. After all, every time she activated her Satan soul, she rapidly aged from the body of a 13-year-old girl to that of a young woman. She wasn't a doctor, but she could safely assume that the constant use of that spell would be bad for her health. Man, that wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. Then again, they're just forest Vulcans. She muttered disdainfully. Shaking her head, she stopped as she sensed a familiar magical surge in the western sector. Her eyes widened in shock as the magical signature warped and turned vile, like a miasma. Damn it, Elfman. His wings appeared in an instant and he headed towards his brother's location, praying that he could arrive in time to save his brother and friend. Elfman, 10 minutes earlier. Elfman struck another Gorian with his transformed arm and ducked beneath a telegraph device that, had it been connected, would have sent him tumbling several meters. The Gorian righted itself in midair and landed heavily on the ground, growling at the white-haired youth who had defeated his companions. However, Elfman was already moving with deceptive speed toward him. As he approached the Gorian, he attacked with his longer arms in an attempt to catch him by surprise. Elfman had just leaped onto the Vulcan, his momentum charging toward the startled Gorian. Mid-leap, Elfman twisted his form sideways and drew his leg back. Beast leg. Black horse. He kicked the Gorian in the back of the neck as his leg contracted into a horse's hoof, complete with a hoof and over 2 feet long. The result was that Elfman's foot dug into the Gorian's neck with a sickening crack as the magically enhanced hoof pierced the spinal cord. The Gorian crashed lifelessly to the ground while Elfman landed disoriented in a nearby heap. But he coughed as a fine cloud of dust entered his mouth, kicked up by his rough landing. That's how a real man does things. He choked through the cough. His cough lingered for another minute before Elfman felt comfortable enough to move. As he stood up, the sound of footsteps alerted him to Naruto's arrival. Lifting his head, he caught sight of Naruto walking toward him, looking as pristine as he had been. A delighted smile spread across Elfman's face. "Naruto-san. I see you finished your group. Did you have any problems?" he inquired. Naruto shook his head as his shadow clone dissipated. "No, they were pretty easy to defeat. What about you, did you sustain any injuries?" he asked, sorting through the memories his clone had accumulated during the battle. Well. Looks like you two have been busy." The unfamiliar voice immediately put Elfman on edge and Naruto merely narrowed his eyes. He had sensed the beings that had surrounded them when Elfman had been greeting him, but he hadn't made any attempt to warn him to determine their objective. Turning to face the individual who was speaking, Naruto raised an eyebrow as he took in the man's physical appearance. The man was of medium height and wore a white baboon-like suit that concealed every part of his body. The baboon-like garment was a pale blue, and when Naruto peered through the eyeholes, he saw 2 red eyes with white pupils and blue shadows. Hearing Elfman gasp, Naruto turned his head slightly to keep the mysterious man in view while glancing at Elfman out of the corner of his eye. "What's wrong, Elfman? Who is he?" he asked, bracing himself for a confrontation. Masked figures usually had a reason for concealing their identity. They were either famous throughout the lands, infamous for crimes of an extreme nature, or they did so out of necessity. Elfman took a step back as the man began to laugh, his dark voice full of malice, yet smooth as silk. "It seems even the most naive fairies have heard of me. For you not to know me suggests you haven't been here long." The man held out his arms and showed the 2 of them his right palm. "I am Naraku, the Diaukai of the Death Head Group's Assassination Guild. Pleased to meet you." He finished his introduction with a small bow as Naruto activated his hand seals and released Samahata. Naraku didn't seem bothered by the appearance of the chakra blade. If anything, he seemed amused by Naruto's actions. "That's quite an interesting blade, little man. Tell me, can it take on my lizard men?" The figures emerged blurry from the surrounding vegetation to appear in a circle around Naruto and Elfman, eliminating any possibility of escape. They were male humanoid lizard-like creatures with spiky scales covering their bodies. A large plate covered their heads, while manes of hair grew from the top of their skulls down their backs. Naruto frowned as Samahata's bandages unwrapped due to some mental command and slung the sword over his shoulder. "So you went through all this trouble to fight us, huh? I don't feel special." Naraku tilted his head in amusement. "You should. After all, not every new mage gets to meet someone like me early in their career." However, hidden behind the mask, his ruby eyes gleamed with malevolence. "Why don't we make this more interesting? Faster than Naruto expected, but still slower than his own speed, Naraku's arm was pushed outward and a pink object hurtled toward them. Naruto's first instinct was to send the item back to his pocket dimension, but doing so would reveal more of his abilities to his enemy, against whom Naruto couldn't afford to make any mistakes. During his first year after the Fourth Shinobi World War, he discovered that everyone resurrected by the Edo Tensei was more careless with their bodies, as they could regenerate any wound they received. This made them more complacent, which at the time was a boon to the allied shinobi forces, and made Naruto determined to maintain his advantage, despite having a body under the effects of the Edo Tensei. He couldn't afford to be the center of attention right now. He wasn't ready for that kind of attention yet. He blinked as he deliberately stopped to derail the object, which soon became embedded in Elfman's chest. I feel sorry for Elfman, but unfortunately, Makarov and I cannot allow any more of my abilities to be discovered. When Elfman immediately dropped to his knees and screamed in pain, Naruto felt the pink energy of whatever was inside Elfman turn black and evil. Then all hell broke loose. Chapter 7. Controlling Problems Part 2. Chapter 7. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime or manga that appears in this fic. Last time. He couldn't afford to be the center of attention right now. He wasn't ready for that kind of attention yet. He blinked as he deliberately stopped to derail the object, which soon became embedded in Elfman's chest. I feel sorry for Elfman, but unfortunately, Makarov and I cannot allow any more of my abilities to be discovered. When Elfman immediately dropped to his knees and screamed in pain, Naruto felt the pink energy of whatever was inside Elfman turn black and evil. Then all hell broke loose. Chapter 7. Controlling Problems Part 2. The explosion of highly concentrated magic wasn't what Naruto expected. Instead of a massive burst of sinister colored energy erupting from Elfman, the explosion was simply a rather violent transformation. Sure, there was a dramatic increase in Elfman's magic output and a transformation of that energy from friendly but fierce to malevolent and angry, but Naruto was pleasantly surprised and disappointed. The Juubi, at the moment of its transformation, evolved from its round, grotesquely swollen body, with pointed protrusions growing from its back, into a thin, deformed monster with elongated body proportions, a gaunt and twisted neck, its tails ending in hands, and a head with its ear on the right side, its mouth on the left, and its eye in the center. It certainly wasn't an improvement, but at least it was dramatic. Now that I think about it, most of the transformations Shinobi underwent were dramatic. Orochimaru's Yamada no Jutsu, 8-branch technique, transformed him into a giant white snake larger than Manda with 8 heads and 8 tails. Hoshigaki Kisam's fusion with Samehada turned him into a massive shark man, complete with fins, webbed hands, and gills. Jinchuriki became chakra beings by sacrificing their skin and considerable blood. Elfman's transformation just didn't seem impressive to Naruto. Of course, his standards were different from everyone else's, so he had to be given some leeway. The transformation began with Elfman's muscular arms spontaneously doubling in mass. The transformation wasn't natural, as it seemed as if things had forced their way inside his body and were forcing his anatomy to expand to make room for themselves. A similar event was occurring within his legs. They were constantly bulging, taking on the appearance of a feline. Judging by the large paws forming in place of his feet, they resembled those of big cats. His spiky white hair turned jet black and his nails sharpened into inch-long claws that were immediately buried in the earth as his body convulsed in pain. Naraku's mocking laughter forced Naruto to tear his eyes away from Elfman's transformation. The assassin mage was already retreating, leaving the lizardman he had brought to face Naruto. The old man wasn't joking when he said it would be powerful. To think that just a fragment of the demon Lacrima would be enough to corrupt him. Naraku seemed to pause in his thoughts, his chuckles quieting for a moment before resuming with greater enthusiasm. Oh, I see. Naruto assumed a ready stance, taking a few steps back to keep Naraku and Elfman in his sights. With Elfman in this state, he didn't want to expose his back to him. If attacked, he'd be forced to reveal some of his abilities. What the hell did you do to him? He growled, channeling a considerable amount of chakra into Samehada. And what the hell is a Lacrima demon? As expected, Naraku let out a few more dramatic chuckles that echoed through the area. You really expect me to tell you? What naive stupidity. If you want answers, find them yourself. He said, turning his back on Naruto, not considering him a threat at that moment. As for what I did to him, Naraku's ruby eyes turned to meet Naruto's crimson slit eyes, burning with a fire that rivaled Obito's and Kisam's. Naruto could see the substantial amount of power emanating from Naraku's eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had the power to ensure his goals were achieved. In a way, they resembled his own eyes. The similarities were few, but they existed. The differences, on the other hand, were clearly obvious. I suppose you could say I awakened his true instincts. Naraku smiled at the growing irritation in Naruto's eyes. Goodbye, little fairy. Pray we never meet again. Next time will be the last. With that, a cloud of purple miasma was expelled from his cloak, completely concealing Naruto's form, or so he thought. Naruto could see his opponent disappear into the foliage about 10 meters away. He grimaced at the thought of fighting someone as calculating and cunning as Orochimaru again. Samehada, would you mind eating that demon lacrima stuff in Elfman? Samehada remained silent for a moment before giving its answer. In theory, I should be able to do it. I'm not sure how long it will take, but I'm certain I can consume at least half of the strange magic in your body. Naruto nodded deliberately and threw it to the ground, just as the lizard man finally grew impatient and charged at him. Do it, he whispered to his sword. Samehada's bandages dissolved when it used Naruto's chakra boost to unleash its true nature. The scales that were usually hidden from view, keeping it in sword form, literally exploded into view, and its large crazed mouth was exposed for all to see. Naruto knew that the risk involved in his gamble allowing Naraku to even glimpse Samehada's abilities wasn't appealing to him. However, all Naraku would see were its energy absorption talents. If he found them useful, since Naruto wasn't sure if any magic could replicate the effect, Samehada wouldn't allow anyone else to wield it. Those thorny barbs of theirs hurt. Bucking wounded like hell. Despite lacking limbs to allow for movement, Samehada easily slid through the approaching lizardman, who inexplicably ignored her in favor of Naruto. Reaching the child transformer, she sank her serrated fangs into his flesh and began to scrape away the energy emanating from his body. Meanwhile, Naruto had already slipped into Hyuga-style Taijutsu and patiently waited for the nearest creature to catch him. As they approached, shouting tangled war cries, he let his inquisitive mind work, analyzing their speed and assessing his reflexes. When the first one attacked with a magically enhanced roundhouse kick, Naruto leaned his body to the side and cleanly dodged the attack. While the lizard man was still completing his rotation, Naruto had already landed 4 swift strikes on his outstretched leg. Having the combined abilities of Hyuga Hiashi, Hyuga Niji and Hyuga Hinata allowed him to focus on 4 vital joints, causing the ligament supporting the bone to collapse. As a result, the bone would suddenly and painfully dislodge from its socket, effectively paralyzing his opponents. Without even bothering to heed the lizard man's screams as he landed heavily on the injured limb, Naruto charged toward the next attack. His blows were good, quick, and coordinated in such a way that Naruto thought anyone else would have suffered a concussion from them. Shifting his body at the last possible moment to avoid their punches, Naruto continued to dodge their attacks and constantly force them to overextend themselves. After a particular opportunity arose, Naruto struck with a palm strike that literally obliterated Lizardman's heart. Sensing one approaching from behind, Naruto seamlessly shifted from Gyuukin to Goken, albeit only momentarily, and slammed his left foot into the creature's lung. There was a loud cracking sound that signaled the lizard's ribcage had ruptured. Shifting back into Gyuukin form, Naruto glanced quickly at Elfman and let out a quiet sigh of relief as he saw the changes constantly reversing. I need to finish this quickly and deal with the puppeteer. He moved into the stance required for the Haki Rakujuian show, 8 trigram 64 palms, when he sensed a massive amount of energy approaching at high speed. That current of darkness. The large magical seal appeared directly beneath the remaining lizardmen. Multiple tendrils of darkness sprouted and enveloped them all. Murahin landed with the force of a raging bull and slammed her hands against the darkness of the prison. Evil spark. Putting a considerable amount of magic into her hands, she propelled them toward their prison and unleashed the electricity that had been building up. Naraku. The death-headed Diaukai sat atop a tree in the distance, watching the blonde mage engage his lizardman. The boy was skilled, highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat if the screen he just witnessed was any indication. Naraku estimated the boy to be an expert in unarmed combat. He moved with the grace and fluidity of someone who spent a great deal of time training, and his physical strength was truly impressive for someone his age. However, the 13-year-old was no master. There were some gaps in his posture, and his reflexes needed some work. On the other hand, his weapon was the most intriguing sword he had ever seen. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he turned his head to get a better look. Does it have the ability to absorb magic? That would certainly be useful against certain individuals. Unfortunately, he had no other information about the sword and was pressed for time. Had those factors been negated, he would have tried to reach for the blade. No matter. There will always be another time to seize that blade. He smiled as he sensed Strassa's other brother approaching. So, little Mira finally shows up now that I have a rough estimate of her abilities, it's time for me to go. He leaped from a tree branch and landed on the forest floor. But first he drew power from another demon lacrima fragment and focused. I should leave them with one last challenge. The purple magic seal appeared in the air before him and Naraku cast his spell. Living magic. Creation. With Naruto and Murahin. When the cloud of dust whipped up by Murahin's spell dissipated, Naruto could finally get a good look at her new appearance. Her eyes had grown darker and her eyelashes longer, with a thin, dark mark and a slight zigzag pattern running vertically across her right eye. Similar markings appeared on her right breast and both bare thighs. Her hair was wilder, sticking up and curling more tightly, with her front ponytail growing longer and her ears enlarged, stretching back and gaining pointed edges, resembling those of elves. He could see that she had also gained sharp canine teeth, and her lips were coated with dark lipstick. Her forearms and hands underwent noticeable changes, becoming covered in scales, each sprouting a fin-like protrusion on its outer side. She also grew a large, sturdy tail, seemingly made of metal plates or scales, growing smaller and closer to its end. Her clothing had changed as well. Her attire was replaced by a dark one-piece suit that revealed her arms and legs, which were open at the front and back, exposing most of her abdomen, wide décolletage, and upper back. The fabric had lighter colored edges that formed pointed shapes, and its similarly pointed collar was fastened around her neck with a cravat. Her shoulders were cinched with thin belts that protruded from the suit, and her feet were covered by matching high-heeled boots, which were decorated with lighter motifs on their upper portions, taking the form of downward-pointing, serrated blades on the front of her legs and on the lower portions, corresponding to her ankles and feet. She also donned a pair of gloves that covered the backs of her transformed arms. The most important thing, however, was the fact that she looked several years older. If he had to guess, she looked about 19. A silly smile spread across his face. "I think I'm going to have some very pleasant dreams tonight." Morahin frowned heavily at the unconscious lizardman at her feet before turning toward Elfman, worry and concern flashing in her eyes. As she approached his defeated form, she saw Samahata still feasting on the last traces of tainted magic in his body. Assuming the worst, she called out to her younger brother, Elfman. "Wake up." Samahata took that as her cue to leave and unhooked her fangs from his body, letting him fall rather roughly to the ground. He immediately began coughing violently, spitting out traces of saliva as he cautiously got to his feet. By that time, Morahin had already reverted to her human form and was gently rubbing his back to try and ease his discomfort. "Samahata, come. It's time for us to return." Gliding towards her master, the sentient blade found itself being picked up by the white-haired woman. Morahin stared at the strange thing she was holding. Whatever had happened to her brother was surely due to this thing's actions, and she was determined to put it behind her for harming him. "What the hell is this? Damn, that hurts." Samahata's deadly spikes made their debut, knowing the inner workings of Morahin's left hand well. They struck deep, probably piercing her entire palm and emerging like a hot knife through butter. Dropping the handle, Morahin winced as the spikes were pulled from her palm. Cool, just bucking cool. To be fair, she didn't have much magic left and was exhausted from using her takeover spell. Satan's soul took a huge effort on her part to activate and maintain, so it was extremely difficult for her to use it more than twice a day at her current levels. Add to that the fact that her hands were badly injured and in no condition to defend herself, and she felt quite justified in swearing loudly against nothing in particular. Naruto shook his head at her mischief and walked toward her dejected form. By now, Elfman had managed to stand and also went to his sister. "Big sis, what happened to you?" he asked when he noticed the mess on her hand. His eyes narrowed and his tone grew angrier. "Who did this to you? I'll teach them what happens when they mess with us." Morahin and Elfman shook their heads to see Naruto holding Samahata in his hands and shyly scratching his head. "Would you mind waiting until I explain before you act?" Elfman hesitated for a moment before nodding as Morahin shrugged. Naruto followed suit and placed Samahata on the ground in front of them. "Samahata is a sentient sword that I recently took a liking to. Since then, everyone else who tries to wield it ends up paying the price." He wrinkled his nose at Morahin's hand. "Usually with blood. I should have told you, but I didn't think that situation would arise. That, and I don't really know you guys that well. Now, why don't I bandage Mira-chan's hand and head back to the city?" Elfman looked like he was about to say something, but Morahin interrupted him. "Wait. First of all, why was your weird sword chewing at Elfman in the first place? Second, why were you attacked by all those lizardmen?" "Well, Elfman and I ran into a member of the Caucus Head's Caucus Assassination Guild. His name was Naraku." "Wait, you met the Diaukai of the Death's Head Caucus?" Morahin interrupted, her eyes wide. Naraku was an infamous member of that guild, having completed over 300 assassination requests. If she compared him to fairy tale standards, he was probably somewhere on par with Gildert's Clive. Not a reassuring thought. Yes, he brought the lizardman with him and managed to stab Elfman with something he called a demon lacrima fragment. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Seeing their confusion, Naruto sighed once more. "You say he would use something extremely rare, or at least little known. I suppose you sensed that change in Elfman's magical energy?" he asked. Morahin nodded as Naruto crouched down and began bandaging her hands with Samahata's. "Yes, I just finished dealing with the Gorians in the northern sector when I first sensed it," she replied. Naruto nodded as he continued his story, Elfman also crouching down to listen to what had happened. He put the fragment inside Elfman. He was too fast for any of us to do anything to stop him. Well, that wasn't true, but some fabrication was necessary for his future plans. After that, Elfman began to transform into something, and Naraku left. He probably expected those lizardmen to take us both down. Thanks for the rescue, by the way. She just shrugged and looked away, a light blush on her cheeks. Don't mention it. You probably could have handled them on your own. Naruto shook his head. I still offer my thanks. Any help, no matter how big or small, should be rewarded with gratitude. Elfman jumped into the conversation. Then why was your sword attacking me? I don't think I was chasing you. He looked perplexed, his confused expression comical. Since the shard was infusing your body with its own magic, I had the idea of having Samahata feed on that tainted magic to drain it. Even if it contained a large amount of energy, Samahata would consume that amount faster than it could be released inside you. With that, Naruto finished bandaging Murahan's left hand and stood up. Brushing the dust off his pants, he opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by the appearance of an extremely large purple magic seal in the air. At the F. Erwayarg. Like a projected hologram, a creature emerged from within the seal. It was twice the size of Elfman, with long flowing arms, sharp claws sprouting from its back, and thick fur covering its abdomen and pectoral muscles prominently displayed. Its hair grew into a mane-like shape that reached the back of its knees, its ears and canine teeth became pointed, and it had a pair of striped horns pointing upwards, growing from a plate on its forehead. Its legs, much smaller in comparison to its large arms and torso, grew with dark hooves, and it also gained a pair of protrusions sprouting from its shoulders, similar in appearance to its horns. Floating in the air next to the creature was Naraku himself. He gave the three of them a cheeky little wave before disappearing in a blurry motion. The monster roared once more before launching its attack with astonishing speed. Naruto cursed before scooping Murahan up with his left arm and grabbing Elfman with his right. Channeling chakra into his feet, Naruto leaped out of the creature's path and landed several feet away effortlessly. Naraku was gone. Naruto couldn't sense his magic nearby, and it was impossible to fool his newfound otherworldly senses. He could end this quickly with ninjutsu, but Murahan and Elfman were close. What was the best course of action? He turned to Murahan. You wouldn't have any ideas on how to get rid of that thing, would you? He asked. Knock him unconscious and I can handle the rest. Surprisingly, it was Elfman who spoke. His eyes were hard and unwavering, as if he were daring Naruto to disagree with his idea. No, Elfman. You can't perform the full body takeoff yet. You'll end up being overpowered by it. Murahan glared at her brother, unwilling to let him carry out his plans. Naruto raised an eyebrow despite keeping his eyes on the charging creature. Is there a problem with Elfman's takeover? He leaped away from the beast's furious charge, curious why it didn't try to use its arms each time it jumped. It's probably operating on its basic instincts and can't use its limbs to their full effect. Landing softly, Naruto decided to offer his own opinion. Murahan, perhaps we should try Elfman's idea. He cut off her impending objections with a timely cough. I know you care about your brother's well-being, but Elfman is aware of the risks and wants to believe he can overcome them. I can't guarantee it, but his idea is the best we have. But she protested weakly. If anything happens to him, you'll be there to help him through it. Believe in him. She left Elfman below and gave him an appraising look. He's your brother, after all. Elfman nodded in gratitude as he began gathering the necessary amount of magic for his plan. Thank you, Naruto-san. Hearing those words from a real man motivates me to do even better than before. Naruto shook his head, amused. So all I have to do is knock him out? He questioned as he began to hop on his tiptoes. Elfman's nod was all the confirmation he needed. With another burst of chakra, he was halfway toward the monster, which was also on its third charge. Seeing that its eyes were hidden from his view, Naruto activated his Byakugan. His eyes transformed from their usual red slits to white, with a pale lavender tint. Stopping 5 feet away from the charging beast, Naruto settled into the Gyuukin stance for the second time that day. Here within my range, he waited patiently for the beast to approach him, nostalgia swirling in his mind. In his eyes, the monster was replaced by the image of the old Uzumaki Naruto. He found the irony of the situation amusing. He and the beast had taken on the roles of Neji and Naruto, respectively. Now just like back then. The beast was less than a meter away when Naruto finally moved. Haki Nai Sho, 8 trigrams. 2 palms. 2 consecutive blows stopped it in its tracks. Yon Sho, 4 palms. 2 more strikes found their marks on the flesh of the beasts, bringing the total to 4 strikes. Hachi Sho, 8 palms. Geikaroku Sho, 16 palms. Sanjay Nai Sho, 32 palms. The breath of the blow rained down upon the creature with unerring precision and speed, forming afterimages and further enhancing the illusion of Naruto extending his arms to attack. Finally, almost at the end of his technique, Naruto connected with the final strike and walked past the frozen beast, his hands in his pockets. As he stood with his back to the creature, he silently finished the technique's name. Haki Rakujkin Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms. As if triggered by a silent device, the beast crashed to the ground in blissful unconsciousness. Soon, the sound of footsteps announced Elfman's approach. Turning to face the young man, Naruto chuckled at the look of astonishment on Elfman's face. "Not that I mind you enjoying the awesomeness that is me, but don't you have a job to do?" Elfman grew serious and knelt beside the unconscious beast, concentrating. "Take control." A bright light began to radiate from Elfman as he absorbed and copied the beast's power. Naruto watched the screen with interest, while Murahin looked on with a mixture of hope and concern. The light grew brighter as Elfman began to grow taller and more muscular. When the light finally faded, there was Elfman in beast form. The only difference was his white hair and tattered pants. "The Elfman?" Mira called softly. "Elfman, can you hear me?" Elfman glanced at his sister and his third teammate before a smile spread across the acquisition wizard's face. "I knew I could do it," she said, smiling brightly. Naruto bowed his head. "As long as you believe in yourself, you can achieve any goal you set your mind to." Despite his words, he had already activated his Sharingan, likely as a result of Elfman losing control of the beast. Taking risks was not something he took lightly. Murahin wrapped her arms around Elfman and let out a sigh of relief. "I was afraid you wouldn't make it. What you did was very reckless and could easily have backfired. Don't ever scare me like that again, do you hear me?" Elfman chuckled. "Sure. Now I can finally be as strong as everyone else," and he stopped mid-sentence, dropping to one knee and clutching his head. He began to thrash about, letting out a bestial roar that echoed throughout the forest. Naruto gritted his teeth and made his choice. "I'll have to reveal my Sharingan to Mira-chan. She's already seen me subdue Aknologia, and we're the only ones here." As Murahin moved away from her deranged brother, Naruto moved forward and encountered Beast Elfman. The Sharingan's ultimate ability, commonly used, is capable of inducing a unique form of hypnosis that involves suggesting actions and thoughts to the opponent through genjutsu created by simple eye contact. As a skilled Sharingan user, and with a wealth of experience gained from the strongest Uchiha in history, as well as insights into the weaknesses of other shinobi, it was child's play for Naruto to suppress the beast within Elfman. In the space of a second, Elfman's bestial eyes regained their human consciousness, and he took a step back, looking at Naruto in a new light. "You managed to subdue the beast." Murahin was in a similar state of shock. It was as if every time Naruto revealed something about himself, instead of providing answers, he posed new questions that left her more than confused. "Naruto-kun, what happened? What did you just do?" For a moment, Naruto didn't respond, and a fringe of his hair covered his eyes. "What I'm about to tell you is a secret that Master Makarov and I want to keep for a while longer. If you want to know." He looked at them, his Sharingan spinning hypnotically, pulsing with power and authority. "You must promise never to reveal this without my or the Master's permission." Seeing them nod solemnly, Naruto began to speak. Chapter 8. The Consequences. Chapter 8. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime or manga that appears in any and all of my works. The journey back to Everlue Mansion was uneventful. The three Fairy Tail wizards were all silent, each lost in their own thoughts after Naruto's revelation. To say they were surprised would be an understatement. Elfman reverted to his human form, seemingly unharmed but still determined to seek medical reassurance before returning to the guild. His clothes were torn and covered in blood, dust, and a bit of foliage. He and Murahin had moved away from their blonde companion, who stood a few feet ahead, trying to clear their thoughts. Elfman's gaze drifted to Naruto's back, questions burning in his mind. Such terrifying magic, yet it could aid my own ambitions. He clenched his fists tightly as he recalled the force of the beast's instincts in that brief moment when he had lost control. The creature, even when unconscious and possessed by Elfman, had been a force to be reckoned with. If Naruto hadn't suppressed its consciousness the moment he did. Elfman shuddered at the thought of the outcome. If Naruto could help me control my magic, this wouldn't happen again. I refuse to be weak. I have to become stronger. His clear blue eyes hardened with immense determination and resolve to protect my sisters. Murahin was also deep in thought. She was recalling the first time she met Naruto. That dragon was ready to attack anything and everything in sight, but the moment Naruto laid eyes on her, it became as terrifying as a statue. So that's how she subdued him, she realized. She wasn't as well versed in the different types of magic in the world as the Master Urza, but she could recall a type of eye magic that allowed one to project images into the minds of others. Naruto's, something she admitted was largely unknown to him, was as deadly as the Master's light magic. If it's so dangerous, but he's still in his juvenile stage, she narrowed her eyes as a thought formed, his magic could be a lost magic like Natsu's. Ahead of them, Naruto continued on his way to the mansion to collect payment for the job application. Revealing the Sharingan to Elfman and Murahin had been a gamble, but he had managed to impress upon them the importance of his secret. He hadn't told them everything about it. The only things he mentioned were its ability to predict movements, create illusions, and copy attacks, the general abilities that every Sharingan user had at their disposal when they reached the Tutamo stage. Fortunately, he was able to use Kamui with his normal Sharingan, something Obito had managed to do in his previous life, as he had no intention of revealing any secrets related to the evolved stages of his Taijutsu. Her eyes settled on Everlu's mansion in the distance. Let's see, there was a note about payment for the number of monsters we deposited. She tilted her head in thought. I definitely killed 8 Gorians in the forest, 2 more lizardmen before Murahin showed up, and that's it, I guess. So that means he should pay me 2,200,000 jewels. Not bad for my first job application. As they approached the gates, Naruto's good mood at the prospect of earning his money increased when he saw Duke Everlu's profile through a window. That kid must be seriously loaded to be able to pay all that. Now I'm definitely going to steal everything of value. And even better, I can kill him without anyone getting a clue. Let it not be said that Naruto did not find the use of the Rinnegan extremely satisfying. But the new spring in his wake, Naruto headed through the mansion gates and continued through the house until he reached the library. He paused, waiting for his teammates to catch up before entering. They were only a minute behind him, giving him enough time to create a shadow clone and transform into a spider. The clone's Rinnegan eyes connected with Naruto's, and it quickly crawled under the door and across the carpet, positioning itself to kill Everlu without any trouble. A few feet approached Naruto, and he gave the brothers an amused look. What took you so long? Weren't you the one who complained that I was late? Murahin frowned. Yeah, laugh all you want. When I'm back to 100%, I'll make you pay for that comment. However, both she and Naruto knew she wasn't going to do anything to him. It was more of a reflex than anything else. From what she'd observed, Mira had a reputation she wanted to uphold, and from the whispers she'd overheard the guild members making earlier that day, it was a pretty big one. He shrugged and turned the doorknob. Whatever. Upon entering the library, the group stood right in Everlu's face. He was still sitting on his comfortable sofa, reading a large book with a picture of an incredibly ugly woman on the cover. If that wasn't bad enough, the woman was naked. Beads of sweat formed on each of their faces as Everlu let out a perverted chuckle. Shit. Coughing loudly, Naruto clicked his tongue when Everlu finally noticed he wasn't alone. He quickly hid his book and gave them a look. Yes. I suppose you're here to admit you didn't deal with them. That doesn't surprise me. Fairy Tail was said to be the most trustworthy guild in Magnolia. Murahin and Elfman bristled as Naruto simply unplugged him. The guy wasn't going to live much longer, so why be fooled by his words? Actually, we've dealt with them and are ready to receive our payment. Since he added that each monster was worth 200,000 jewels, my bill will be 2,200,000 jewels. Elfman, he gestured to the tall, white-haired boy, he took down 7 monsters, so his salary should be 1,540,000 jewels. Murahin. He paused and turned to look at her. How many did you take care of? She shrugged. About 2 dozen or so. Naruto nodded and turned to Duke, who was rapidly paling. Yes, then you have to pay him 5,200,000 jewels. That is, if you actually have that amount of money. He finished. After all, if you don't pay us, people will start gossiping about the richest man in town not having enough money to pay the incentive he put on his own job application. Mages won't accept your applications because you'd be known as someone who didn't care about paying his dues, but hey, no pressure. Everlu felt like banging his head against a wall. Why had he put that notice back in his request? Shiratsum Town. The trio walked away from Everlu Mansion with their pockets considerably heavier. Elfman had managed to get a change of clothes. He now wore a large striped shirt which had alternating colors and an exact copy of his pants, along with completely new sandals. The group entered Shiratsum Station and booked a train to Magnolia. When he sensed they were a safe distance from the mansion, Naruto's clone crept toward Everlu. The bastard was asleep at the time, his bodyguards on their lunch break and his servants out in town. The clone dispelled the transformation and swiftly activated his Rinnegan. Grasping the man's dangling arm, the clone extracted Duke Everlu's soul using the human path's abilities. Assimilating the soul took some time, but the clone was able to successfully extract all the information about his wealth and merchandise. Unfortunately, he would have to impersonate Everlu for a while before dying of natural causes. Transforming into Everlu, Naruto's clone let out a perverted laugh as Duke's thoughts of the more normal maids under his control appeared. Hey, it wasn't like the boss would have minded. Magnolia. Naruto sighed dramatically as he and Murahin walked through the streets of Magnolia. Elfman had been admitted to a magic hospital, that is, a hospital specifically designed to treat mages. They still needed the doctor's approval if Elfman was going to be alright. After all, they weren't even sure what a demon lacrima was in the first place. Naruto had his own suspicions about what the demon lacrima could do. It was similar to the curse seal Orochimaru slapped his desired vassal, in that it gave the user a power boost and a darker hue to their energy. Anything else was just fragments of ideas that were probably wrong. Makarov might know about this demon lacrima. It would be better to know more about this now than later. His eyes narrowed imperceptibly as he recalled Naraku's grinning face. I'll need to find out more about that guy, too. Someone with such a reputation can't be underestimated. Murahin bumped Naruto's side with her hip. Don't act like a drama queen. You should be proud of yourself. Most rookies never earn more than 2 million jewels in their first jobs. Well, I still haven't found a place for Setsuna to stay, and I apologize for being a bit dramatic, he said curtly. Dodging Murahin's half-hearted attempt to hit her, he grabbed her and spun her around, his hands firmly on her waist. The blush that lit up her face prompted a burst of amused laughter from him. Murahin playfully slapped his arm, which was draped around her shoulders, and gave him a look. What was that for? What? Can't I bother my new friend like this? No, you can't. Freeloader. Murahin shook her head at his antics, ignoring the fact that she was smiling. I haven't felt this comfortable with any man I know. Thinking back to her friends, the man she was closest to was probably Laxus, and even he had his stupid moments. From what she'd seen, Naruto was much more laid back and fun than Laxus, but he could also get serious when the situation called for it. Naruto isn't a bad guy to hang out with. Maybe I'll go on another request with him, she thought. Tell me, Naruto, he lazily shifted his eyes to her, the only indication that he was paying attention. There was something in her voice, a hidden emotion that piqued his interest. Murahin was loud, rude, condescending, and usually quite expressive about what she had to say, so what could possibly make her sound so calm? You would I mean I just wanted to say. She took a deep breath and pulled him into a hug. That wasn't enough to surprise Naruto, but then again, it was pretty hard to surprise him. Is there any reason why I'm being rewarded? His voice was low and questioning as his hands responded to his action. Murahin gave him a light slap on the arm, even as she felt her face heat up. Be baka. I'm just thanking you, you know, for helping Elfman get back there. She mumbled, still leaning into his embrace. She could see a lot of civilians staring at their situation, but she was too happy to make a scene. They must know about me. If they didn't, I'd say it looked like we were being mean in public. For his part, Naruto managed to remain calm when the topic of Elfman came up. It was true that he felt guilty about how he had allowed Elfman's condition to develop, but he had committed far worse acts, to the point that Elfman's plight would be seen as insignificant. Before meeting Setsuna, he had made a habit of practicing his espionage and manipulation skills on various people. Daimyos, common merchants, the remaining samurai in the land of the dead, the other minor hidden villages, and many others had their lives made worse or brighter by his actions toward them. Having inherited much of Obito's personality, it wasn't difficult for him to become obsessed with collecting various powerful objects. He had taken the brains and chakra of the 5 Kage as soon as he could control his new body. The Rikidem Sen and Nomgu, tools of the Sage of Six Paths treasure of Kumo, was also stolen by him. The Forbidden Scroll of Konoha, the Raijin no Ken, the Dragon Summoning Scroll of Yuzushi Ogakure. And the list went on. Yes, I'm glad I could help. But we need to get stronger. This mission only showed me how lucky we were against that guy. If something like that happens again, we might not make it out alive. He spoke softly, slowly rubbing circles on Mira's back. It was something he had developed when Setsuna entered his life. For now, though, we should enjoy surviving. Then, we'll train until we're strong enough to protect our precious people. Beautiful people? Murahin asked, stepping back to look Naruto in the face. Naruto nodded. It's something a friend taught me before he died. A light of understanding appeared in Murahin's eyes, and Naruto continued. He believed that when a person has something important they want to protect, that's when they truly become strong. Murahin immediately thought of her brothers when she considered their words. Other images began to form behind them. Makarov, Kana, Laxus, Mikao, Natsu, Wakaba, Gray, even Urza was on her list. Do you have a precious person? Once. He died a few years ago. Nothing more was said as they broke their embrace. She thought Naruto still had his arm around Murahin's shoulders. The gates of Fairy Tail came into view, a welcome sight for both mages, well, mage and shinobi, and Murahin slipped out of Naruto's grasp. Come on. Lysandra must be pretty worried about us, and I'm sure that retarded bitch is back. She sneered. The raised eyebrow was all he got. Why do you hate each other so much? When you meet, it's like you're on opposite sides of a war. A thought struck him. Are you lesbian negatives? Seeing Murahin stumble in surprise was something Naruto would come to appreciate. She stood up and turned around with a look of horror on her face. What the hell are you talking about? I'm straight, damn it. She raised her fist at him, frowning heavily at the insinuation that she and Urza were seeing each other. Even if I were, there's no way I'd chase after that jerk even if I were paid to. Naruto raised his hands in surrender. It was just a thought, no need to rip my head off, he muttered as they entered the guild. Makarov's office. Makarov was happy. The most troublesome members, Natsu, were absent on a work request, which meant the guild was much quieter than usual. The Magic Council hadn't bothered him since he handed in his report, and his beer sponsor had even been kind enough to give them double the beer they'd ordered. However, Laxus was still in his attitude phase, the only thing that spoiled his day. Well, that and Naruto's earlier stunt. He admitted. No matter how many times he reminded himself of it, he still found it a mouthful to swallow. It's hard to believe the day isn't over yet. Makarov was jolted from his thoughts by knocking on his door. Grumbling incoherently, he turned around before shouting, "Come in, it's open." Naruto entered the office just as a shout rang out from the guild bar. He paid it no mind as Makarov grunted and slapped his face with his palm. Of all times, why now? It was so nice and peaceful without those two fighting. I guess they've been like this ever since they met. Naruto asked as he settled into the seat across from Makarov. Makarov frowned as he stood up. Unfortunately. I wonder if they clashed before ending up here. That would certainly explain their complicated relationship. Well, I'm not here to talk about Urza-san and Mira-chan's rivalry. He leaned forward to meet Makarov's gaze. Something happened during our job application that left me worried. Tell me, what do you know about Naraku and the Diablo Lacrima? Makarov looked pale. You encountered Naraku. And you're still alive. Remarkable. He blew hard, clutching his hands. Were you in danger? His voice was controlled, but Naruto could detect the worry and concern for his children. Then again, Naruto had inadvertently made their fears more justified. After all, he had presented himself as a seasoned chunin during their first talk. Elfman had a fragment of the demon Lacrima embedded within him, but Samahata managed to consume all the tainted magic before it could seriously affect him. Unfortunately, his Toma magic might be even more difficult to control, Naruto stated. Makarov closed his eyes. Elfman must have been hit pretty hard by that news. Spending so much time trying to catch up with his sisters only to have his work destroyed in an instant, it makes my heart ache with sympathy. Naruto scratched his cheek as he mentally rehearsed everything he wanted to say. I didn't say my analysis was accurate. I may have made a mistake in my diagnosis. In any case, I was wondering if Elfman's problem had more to do with him than the difficulty of the takeover spell. Naruto made a hand gesture, and Makarov's wooden desk began to tense up, as if something were trying to break free. Makarov literally fell over in shock when a branch rapidly grew from his desk. Wood make magic was something he'd seen before, so he wasn't surprised by what had just happened. What surprised him was the sense of calm emanating from the wooden structure. It felt so pleasant and peaceful that he even unconsciously took a step forward to approach the branch. I see you felt the effects of my Mokuton, wood release. Naruto's voice broke the spell under which Makarov found himself and drew his attention. I was planning to help Elfman train his takeover by acting as a check in case he lost control due to the spell. With a swift pulse of chakra, the branch disintegrated as quickly as it had been created. But first, please enlighten me about the demon that Lacrima Naraku mentioned. Makarov nodded, absent-mindedly stroking his beard. Alright. I'll tell you about that cursed object. Physically, it's a sphere that appears to be made of a crystalline material that changes color according to the wishes of its user. Much of the origins of the Lacrima demon are shrouded in mystery. I can only warn you of its abilities. He cautioned. Naruto shrugged. I wasn't expecting anything more than that. However, any knowledge is worth more than gold at this point. In any case, the demon Lacrima has the power to grant immense power to whoever wields it. Even a single fragment is enough to increase the power of a double being. With enough fragments, even the weakest mage would have more than enough power to use lost magic without the health risks. Not only is it capable of granting power, but it can also grant a wish to whoever manages to find it. His eyes met Naruto's. If Naraku is searching for the pieces of the demon Lacrima, then we must make preparations. Naraku is a very deadly enemy, Naruto. Even my former master couldn't emerge victorious in their battles. Naruto nodded and stood up. Turning to the door, he made a small wave. I'd like to spend more time talking, but I still need to find a place for Setsuna and me to sleep. I'll talk to you later, Jai-san. Magnolia. Setsuna and Naruto followed the short, stocky man who claimed to own one of the best, if not the best, apartments in Magnolia. The journey took approximately 5 minutes from the guild, and the apartment was located in the heart of the city, allowing easy access to and from the guild, as well as Magnolia's various shops. As soon as the man finished showing them, Naruto cast a genjutsu to make him believe they had paid the down payment as well as the next 3 months' rent. Making sure the man had long since left, Naruto turned to Setsuna. "Why don't we rest today and work on what needs to be done to the apartment tomorrow?" She nodded carefully. "Yes. It would be best for us to rest while we can." Naruto nodded as well. Before that, he formed the hand seals for the summoning jutsu and slammed his hands into the ground. A large cloud of smoke appeared as Naruto stood upright once more. "I need to start setting up a new espionage system in this world. Fortunately, we have the best person for the job." He smiled as the smoke cleared, revealing Naruto's human path. "It's been a while, Iro-senin." Chapter 9. Showdown. Chapter 9. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime manga that appear in my fics. If I did, there would be a lot more fan service in them. Naruto smiled as he took in the familiar form of his godfather. Jiraiya was dressed in his usual kimono of a short green shirt and matching pants, beneath which he wore chainmail armor that revealed the sleeves and legs of his outfit with his red haori. Unlike before, he wasn't wearing handguards, having replaced them with metal armbands. His missing limb had been replaced, eliminating any evidence of the aftermath of his battle with Nagato, and his hair was even longer. Even without activating the Byakugan, Naruto could see that his mentor's body had become more toned and slightly slimmer than when he was alive. "It's been a while, hasn't it, Iro-senin?" Jiraiya smirked at the mention of his hated nickname. "Certainly, brat. I almost imagined you'd forgotten about the rest of us in that pocket dimension of yours." His gaze shifted to Setsuna, who was lounging in the wooden chair next to Naruto, and a goofy grin spread across his face as hearts appeared in his eyes. "Whoa. Nice catch, Naruto. Definitely a 10. Steam billowed from his nostrils as he gave Naruto a double thumbs up. Naruto smiled. "Oh, yes, it definitely is. I'm sorry for not introducing you to the two of them sooner, but I had my reasons." He crossed the spacious living room and sat down in the chair opposite Setsuna with a sigh. "Please, have a seat, Iro-senin. There are a few things we need to discuss right away." Jiraiya's goofy demeanor vanished at the serious tone of Naruto's voice, and his eyes hardened as his posture straightened. There was a time for everything, and now was the time for Game-senin to leave Konoha. He sat in the third seat to Naruto's left, making sure to keep his body leaning towards Setsuna in the position she had attacked him in. Most unlikely, but minor things have killed many a shinobi in Kunoichi. Besides, he narrowed his eyes at her. "She looks a lot like that Uchiha Sasuke." Naruto clasped his hands together as he leaned forward in his seat. "Jiraiya, meet Uchiha Setsuna. Setsuna-chan, this guy is the pervert I told you about." He introduced himself, wondering how the two would react. Jiraiya, meanwhile, remained silent as he looked at the girl in a new light. The only Uchiha survivors of the clan massacre were Itachi and Sasuke. Obito didn't really count since he was supposed to be Kia at the time. "And Uchiha, huh? I suppose you weren't in Konoha during the Uchiha clan massacre, were you?" he asked, his eyes scanning her form for clues to their relationship. Unfortunately for him, Setsuna was still wearing her usual cloak, which concealed her alluring figure. She rolled her eyes. "Please stop staring at me. My mother and my tenant would be upset if some unworthy man were to devour me with his eyes." She crossed her arms beneath her breasts, though the action was hidden from Jiraiya by his cloak. "To answer your question, I suppose you could say I was in Konoha at the time of the massacre, but you might also be right if you assume I wasn't there. It all depends on which Konoha you're talking about." She replied coldly, her onyx eyes bleeding from the Sharingan with unerring ease. At that moment, Naruto jumped into the conversation. "What Setsuna-chan means is that she's not from our world. Her brother sent her across dimensions in a last-ditch effort to evade her captors." He leaned back in his chair and crossed his legs. "From what she told me, Jinchuriki from all the elemental continents were being rounded up and experimented on by Konoha. In her world, Konoha was known as the most bloodthirsty and battle-crazy hidden village. They even had their own mercenary group designed for the sole purpose of defeating and capturing Jinchuriki. The criminal mercenary group, Daybreak. If Jiraiya hadn't explored the possibilities of time-space fuinjutsu, he would have had a hard time believing Naruto's claims. Wait. He gestured to Setsuna, a hint of disbelief coloring his words. "Are you saying she's a Jinchuriki?" At Naruto's silent nod, the Game-senin turned to the Uchiha heiress. "If you don't mind me asking, which Bijuu do you have?" he inquired, having a clue as to which one she might contain. Setsuna held up 9 fingers, and Jiraiya slapped her face, annoyed with himself. Well, of course she'd carry a powerful one. Her allies went so far as to send it far away across dimensions to avoid its capture. Raising his head, he looked at his successor. "Alright, Naruto, I think it's time you told me everything that's happened to you." Naruto bowed his head. "I was about to, Iro-senin. It's all connected to the reason I called you in the first place." Shifting into a more comfortable position, Naruto began recounting the events that had transpired since his last conversation with his godfather. He started with his meeting with Setsuna, dabbled slightly in his exploits in the elemental nations, touched on the subject of his newfound strength, and finally concluded with his time back in his homeworld. "I left for many reasons I don't wish to discuss at this time," he stated, his words firm and unyielding. Jiraiya leaned back, a weary sigh escaping him as he closed his eyes. "Well, all of that is indeed interesting, you still haven't made your purpose for summoning me clear," he persisted, trying not to dwell on some of the things Naruto had said. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Naraku's grinning face floated in his mind, mocking him wherever he was. "When we arrived in this new world, Setsuna and I joined a guild called Fairy Tail." Seeing Jiraiya's confusion, Naruto proceeded to explain what little he knew about Earthland to his former sensei. In Earthland, mages band together to form a guild. I suppose you could associate them with the hidden villages, with mages being the equivalent of shinobi. However, our world is far stronger than theirs. Why would that be? If they have similar but different abilities to shinobi, wouldn't that put them on a level playing field? Jiraiya asked, wondering why Naruto of all people would judge these mages without getting a proper indication of their strength. Normally I'd say yes, but not this time. Guilds that participate in requests that are less honorable than what people would like are labeled dark guilds because mages, who see themselves as the protectors of civilians, have to maintain an image that appeals to the public. Naruto snorted, recalling his bewilderment when Makarov explained things to him in the master's office. They don't fight with the intent to kill, and those who lack the cunning and intelligence that distinguish shinobi from everyone else, the scum, who don't deserve to live, are sent to prison cells, in the belief that they will learn from their mistakes and turn over a new leaf. As always, there are exceptions to this mentality. One of them was an assassin from a dark guild who appeared in my first job application. Setsuna's group of friends lunged at him in surprise. He hadn't told her anything about that. His name is Naraku, the so-called Yaokai of the Death Group's assassination guild. He's my reason for summoning you. Jiraiya knew what was expected of him. You want me to spy on him, learn everything there is to know about him, and then kill him after extracting all the useful information. Would you prefer to kill him yourself, or should I handle it alone? Naruto shrugged. I don't care if he dies by my hand or not. All I want you to do is find any information about him and the object he's searching for. From what Jiji told me, an item like the demon lacrima would be extremely useful and dangerous in the wrong hands. He fixed his gaze on Jiraiya once more. Since this mission could likely take up to 3 years, I'll lend you some of my pseudopaths to help you succeed. Jiraiya nodded and stood up. When do I start? Immediately. The spider must learn never to provoke an impatient god. The next morning. Naruto and Setsuna walked slowly toward the guild, taking their time to enjoy the early morning silence. The first rays of the rising sun indicated how early it was. Magnolia seemed to still be asleep. The shops weren't open yet, only a handful of sleepy people were on the streets, and the cheerful sounds of birds chirped throughout the town. Naruto looked at Setsuna, who seemed lost in thought. Setsuna-chan. She blinked, startled from her thoughts. Hi, Naruto-sama. How was your day yesterday? Did you get a job offer? Arriving at a place to stay, talking to Jiraiya, and the ever-present thoughts of the lacrima demon had kept that question out of his mind until now. She shook her head, her long hair billowing. No, I was looking to get to know the other guild members and gather information about their abilities. She paused, as if unsure of what to say. I made a new friend. Well, I think I did. His name is Kana Alberona, one of the oldest in our age group. He uses card magic, a type of holder magic that revolves around the use of magical cards, which can produce a variety of effects, like generating things and even seemingly living beings. He's very nice and fun to talk to. Naruto laughed and put his arm around her shoulders. Well, I'm pretty sure she'd be delighted to have you as a friend. I suppose Kurum approves. Yes, Aka-san sees potential in Kana to become someone great in the future. She leaned closer, her arms sliding from her shoulders to her waist. She wants to go out and have fun too. Naruto sweated. The last time she said that, Tetsu no Kuni went under the water. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Will she promise to behave? He felt Setsuna stiffen momentarily before wrapping her hand around his waist and caressing him with an inhuman sensuality. Moo, Naruto-kun, don't you trust me? He turned to meet her eyes, her usual onyx-colored eyes transformed into a bloody crimson with black slits. After all, I'm not interested in causing any serious harm. She fluttered her long eyelashes and pressed her body closer to his. Naruto used his free hand to run his fingers through his hair, earning a soft purr from the possessed Uchiha. Your definition of mischief involves leveling mountains and raising tsunamis. Besides, don't you think people in the guild will wonder who you are and what you are to Setsuna if you treat her like your daughter in public? She smiled, turning away from Naruto and tossing her hair. Deceit and lies are part of me, as are the destructive tendencies Ka-san passed on to my brothers and me. Just leave it all to me. She winked. Naruto shrugged. I doubt you'd want to go out right now. You're enjoying your beauty too much to be active so soon. They had arrived at the guild and Naruto went ahead to push open the door for Setsuna Kurum. She gave him another fang-laced smile before Setsuna's eyes returned to their normal color, meaning the Uchiha was in control once again. She sighed and rubbed her head. Ka-san can be so much like Matatabi-sama, it's not funny. Upon entering the guild, Naruto could only see Makarov and a few of the older members. Spying on the young brunette, Setsuna, whom he befriended, Naruto moved closer to her. As he approached, he took in her outfit. A light blue camouflage bikini top, calf-length brown pants with 2 bands hanging from each leg, and a light belt covered in heart motifs loosely tied around her waist, and high-heeled sandals. She also wore a pair of metal bracelets adorning her biceps, one with an incision made up of mini AS, and 3 simple, round metal bangles on her right wrist. She has strange taste in clothes. Most women prefer to expose themselves just enough to appear tempting to men, but she doesn't seem to care about that. Then again, I can't really speak to her taste in clothes. I mean, she used to wear that damn orange jumpsuit all the time. Shaking his head to clear those thoughts, Naruto slid into the seat next to the brunette and offered her a smile. Good morning. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, Setsuna-chan's best friend. You must be Kana Alberona, right? Kana was a slender girl of average height with long, wavy, loose brown hair that reached almost to her waist, its shade shifting from time to time. 2 strands of hair framed her face and extended below her shoulders, the left strand emerging from a prominent high fringe. She had large brown eyes with long eyelashes. Her black fairy tail seal was located on the lower left side of her abdomen, just above her hips. She blinked, surprised by his sudden appearance, before extending her right hand. Oh, good morning to you too. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself earlier. I heard you were busy and didn't want to be a bother. Naruto shook her hand, and Kana felt herself blush slightly from the strength of his grip. I remember Setsuna-chan mentioning you in our conversation yesterday. You know, she glanced at him once more, her blush deepening slightly, you're exactly as she described. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well, I've heard a few things about you from her. From what she said, you seem like someone we can trust. Anna waved her hand, trying not to show how upset she was by his words. Well, as the oldest in our group, I have to do my best to look out for the others. I have to be there for all the younger ones, to give them someone they can turn to for help, someone they can look to. Naruto nodded in agreement. That sounds like a worthwhile goal. But are you sure it's wise to do all that by yourself? Anna sighed as she slumped in her seat. Who else is there? The master is too busy playing with the guild. Mikao and Wakaba don't care what the younger ones do, as long as it doesn't interfere with their drinking. Laxus is always absent, and the other kids really don't take my words seriously. What about Lisana? She keeps Natsu and Gray in line, Naruto pointed out. She can only do so much in this guild, and asking her to help me achieve my goal is something I simply can't do. She blinked once more and turned to point at Naruto. You're almost my age, aren't you? You could be my assistant and help me. She breathed a sigh of excitement. Naruto tapped his chin at the thought. Well, I guess I could help whenever I can. I'll be pretty busy for the next month, so I doubt it'll be much help. He mused. Anna asked the question but kept her mouth shut, trying not to seem too nosy. Since you're curious, I'll tell you why I'll be busy. She leaned in to whisper to him. I'll be helping Elfman perfect his camera shooting magic. That and a few other things, she added mentally. Anna gave an oh and smiled. It's great to see someone helping Elfman with his problem. It's really been bothering him for the past month. She perked up as Makarov finished placing the morning's applications on the application board. Throughout their discussion, many more members appeared at the guild. Natsu and Happy were eating in a corner, Gray was eating a snow cone with Mikao, Wakaba and Riitas were chatting, and Urza was heading toward them. It seems Benihim-chan wants to settle her score right now. Naruto observed, watching the Riitas approach with Setsuna in tow. He wondered if it would be best for the two of them to submit a job application and resolve their differences. I should keep that in mind for another time. This tension between Urza-san, Mira-chan, and Setsuna-chan isn't going to resolve itself, no matter how much I wish it would. Everyone watched with interest as Urza approached Naruto and placed her hands on her hips. Good morning, Naruto-san. Are you ready for our scheduled match? Naruto sighed. He trusted her to get straight to the point. He looked at her with his usual distant expression. Oh. And how did you find out that I'd secured a place for Setsuna-chan and me to stay? Common sense dictated that Setsuna should have told him about her purchase, but that idea was thrown out the window when she answered his question. I asked Magnolia about her whereabouts, and one of her neighbors mentioned that she was renting one of the most luxurious apartments, she replied. Naruto sweated. Are you really that eager to try and get rid of me? He was clueless. The doors burst open and Murahin lunged at Urza, fists raised in fight gear. "Hold on, bitch. I'm fighting Naruto today, so get your big ass out of the way." As expected, Urza shook her head and frowned at her rival. "I was first, so get in line. Haven't you learned any manners at all?" "Why did you?" Naruto stood up from his seat, closing the distance between them to prevent further escalation. "Look, we could waste time arguing like this, or you two could fight me at the same time." He stretched, ignoring the incredulous stares of the other members. "Not that I care if there's an order. Either way is fine." Natsu and Gray, both watching with interest, let their jaws drop. Sure, they loved a good fight as much as the next person, but facing those two at the same time, that was insane. Beside them, Lysana looked worried about her new friend. According to Murahin, she had been in a tough fight during her first job application, which was just the day before. Urza and her sister were also very strong, both capable of great things, and vying for the title of strongest sorceress in Fairy Tail. Lysana really wanted to believe that Naruto was holding his own against the onslaught of the two mages, but she feared that he would end up putting in a great effort in the fight. Murahin smiled and punched the air. "Very good. I hope you like it, because this is how I roll. I'll take you down in 3 minutes." Urza nodded, a smile lighting up her face. "Although I would have preferred to fight you alone, this course of action will help gauge your skill level. Shall we meet at the site of your fight with Natsu?" Naruto nodded and turned to Setsuna and Kana, the latter watching in amazement. "Are you two coming? That'll be fun." Kana looked uncertain and glanced at Setsuna for guidance. The Uchiha shrugged and followed him, prompting Kana to stand as well. After all, it wasn't as if they had anything better to do at the moment. Setsuna and Naruto still had plenty of money left over from Naruto's job application, and Kana wanted to go to a job application later that day. What did they have to lose? The land where the dairy plant is located. Naruto bounced lazily on his toes as he met the gaze of the two women. From what he'd seen of Murahin, she was a hand-to-hand specialist. Her entire arsenal of spells, or at least the spells she displayed, complemented her various physical attacks. She was incredibly fast, nearly as fast as post-time Skip Lee, and her strength when she activated her Satan Soul rivaled Sakura's. Fighting her would be a war of attrition. Her body hadn't matured enough to sustain the spell for long, drawn-out battles. Overall, she wouldn't pose much of a problem. Urza, on the other hand, was a mystery. He had no idea what kind of magic she used, and all most people would tell him was that she was terrifying in battle. Sure, he was stronger than almost everyone in this world, but he was raised as a shinobi and reincarnated as one. Why waste energy using flashy jutsu when he could use a method that required a negligible amount of chakra in comparison? In any case, Urza was clueless, and the only way she would learn of his abilities would be in battle. Slamming her hand against the ground, a puff of smoke obscured her view for a brief moment before a gust of wind revealed Naruto wielding a sheathed sword. The scabbard was plain white, though adorned with several lines of runes along its length. At the end was a purple thread tied in the shape of the letter Z. The date was as long as he was tall, its crossguard forming the spiral shape of the Uzumaki clan. Upon seeing the summons, Urza felt her interest piqued. A requip. It looks very different from the ones I've seen. Is it a special requip? Or could it be rune magic? Alright then, shall we begin? Naruto asked, drawing his sword. The blade gleamed almost malevolently in the sunlight. Murahin wasted no time. Take control. Satan Soul. A large magical seal appeared above her, encasing her in a cocoon of purple energy. In less than a minute, Murahin reappeared in all her glory. Urza began to glow brightly as a magic seal appeared around her. Requip. Flight armor. In an instant, Urza's usual clothes vanished, leaving behind an outfit that made Naruto raise an eyebrow. This new armor featured very few armored pieces. It was patterned with cheetahs, and the outfit included a large collar around Urza's neck and a tail hanging from the back of her shorts, both made of thick fur, plus a pair of large cheetah ears adorning either side of her head. She wielded a pair of short swords with elaborate rapier-like handguards shaped like rose thorns. Naruto wasted no time, taking her actions as the signal to begin. He sprinted toward Urza with incredible speed, hoping to force her to reveal her magic and fighting style. As he approached the redeed, his eyes widened momentarily when he saw her moving away from him at her current speed. What? Urza appeared behind him, ready to unleash her kick as Naruto vanished from sight. She froze in shock, allowing Naruto to land a kick to her midsection that sent her sprawling. Sensing Murahin coming from behind, Naruto swiftly launched himself forward with a roundhouse kick that Murahin narrowly avoided. He dodged Urza's flying kick with a well-timed leap and parried a rapier with his sword. Channeling wind chakra into the leaf, Naruto shattered her swords with a single slash. Throwing a punch, Naruto's fist was caught by Urza, who then tried to throw him off balance by pulling him toward her. Instead of resisting, as she expected him to, he let himself be pulled and used the momentum to violently strike Urza. Urza staggered from the blow, slightly disoriented by it. Naruto would have continued his attack, but he was forced to dodge the streams of dark energy that Murahin kept firing at him. He continued to avoid the pellets of doom and reached inside his clothing to activate the storage seal. When the pouch of kunai appeared, Naruto grabbed 3 with his free hand and coated them with fire chakra. Equip. Flame Empress armor. Urza was back in the fray, her outfit changed once again. She now wore armor that was predominantly dark red, but also featured orange and black parts, the former shaped like flames and the latter like the limbs of a dragon. It was basically made up of 3 different parts. The revealing breastplate with dragon wings attached to it, the orange gauntlets, and the dragon claw-shaped cracks. Her hair was also tied up in a pair of long, high pigtails. Naruto threw the kunai at her and activated one of his favorite jutsu without a hand seal. Kunai Shadow Clone Technique 3 kunai instantly multiplied into 300, forcing Urza to concentrate on blocking the swarm of blades. Naruto turned his attention to Murahin, whose fists were enveloped in dark purple energy. Just out of curiosity, what kind of magic does Urza-san use? He asked conversationally as he ran toward Murahin, his body leaning forward in a way that made it seem likely he'd trip over his own feet. Murahin stood her ground as Naruto approached her, saying nothing in response to his question. When he reached a surprising distance from her, she rolled up, avoiding his sidekick, and grabbed his tail. This action earned her an unexpected but not unpleasant cross between a squeal and a whimper. She spun around to strike him, only to feel his left foot slam into her face, sending her tumbling. Naruto initiated a substitution jutsu with one of the kunai Urza had deflected and appeared directly in front of the approaching mage. He stabbed her, confident of victory, when his red blade met hers in a shower of sparks that temporarily blinded her. Naruto thrust forward, demonstrating that Urza's impressive strength was no match for him, and threw a punch that grazed her side. Urza leaned back and kicked upward, trying to catch him in the jaw. With unnatural speed, Naruto ducked his head to avoid the kick and dove to the ground, while simultaneously firing a direct kick to Urza's face that sent her sprawling once more. Evil spark. The sound of thunder caused Naruto to cover his feet with wind chakra. Hearing Murahin's footsteps, Naruto planted the leaf in the ground and used it as a springboard to deliver a double kick to Murahin's ribs, knocking her out of the wind. He followed up with a fire release. Great fireball technique that scorched her body and pushed her back a considerable distance. I should finish this now. Rushing toward the astonishing Urza, Naruto drove his knee into her stomach. The blow knocked her down for the count. The force behind it was far greater than before. Turning to Murahin, Naruto hurled his sword at her with unerring speed and precision. Murahin barely saw the flash of light before she was caught in the nearest tree. Aim, set, and match. Naruto said as he walked toward Murahin's bruised form. Stopping in front of her, Naruto grinned as he pulled out the blade. I win, Mira-chan, he whispered the last part, sending a shiver down her spine with his voice. Everyone who watched the match felt like they'd fainted in a heap. Naruto had only joined their guild yesterday, yet he'd already defeated 3 rising stars in Fairy Tail. Such strength was mind-blowing for a 13-year-old. Natsu and Gray looked at Naruto with envy and admiration. They wanted to beat the 2 girls someday and were understandably jealous that the new kid had done it. However, watching the 2 girls get their just desserts was just as satisfying as the first option. In his office, Makarov sighed as he watched the fight's conclusion. Enjoy your peace while it lasts, Naruto, he thought, focusing his eyes on the folder on his desk. The Magic Council had sent it to him while the fight was still raging, and Makarov knew Naruto would be more than upset by what was written in it. I fear the Council's attempts to force them to join will have disastrous consequences. Unbeknownst to everyone except Naruto, a small paper construction laughed to itself as it flew out of the guild hall. Chapter 10. S-Class, Exams. Chapter 10. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime manga that appears in this fanfic I'm working on. Trust me, if I did own them, I wouldn't be getting these damn X's. Chapter 10. S-Class, Exams. Naruto muttered to himself as he headed toward the guild, cradling an unconscious Urza Scarlet in his arms. He carried her bridal style, her head resting on his biceps and supported by his right hand, while his left arm was wrapped tightly under her legs, allowing them to sway with every movement he made. The young Redeed was breathing evenly, a little drool escaping from her parted lips and running along her jawline, and she was pressed firmly against his body. Beside him, watching Urza in his arms with a strange expression of amusement, surprise, and mischief, was Kana, his new friend. The dark-haired boy walked to his left, content to travel in silence, but occasionally letting out a giggle or two. She was amused by the situation. Her new friend had not only defeated Natsu, who was an extremely stubborn and relentless fighter, but he had also defeated the disciplinarian of Fairy Tail. If that wasn't impressive enough, he had beaten her and Murahin, the demon. Fairly easily, too, if she was honest with herself. While she hadn't managed to see everything that happened in the fight, she had seen enough to realize that Naruto wasn't fighting as hard as he could have. She didn't know why he would choose to do that, kids always love to show off, but she wasn't. She was also surprised by how peaceful Urza looked in her sleep. Every time she'd seen Urza, the girl had an aura that warned others to behave themselves. She rarely smiled. Sure, she smiled a lot, especially on the rare occasions when she defeated Murahin, but she never gave a genuine smile. Since joining Fairy Tail, the only expressions Kana had seen on Urza's face were anger, indifference, arrogance, disapproval, and that slightly mocking glint most girls had at that age. It was a welcome change from the armed girl, though Kana wondered why Urza seemed so comfortable in Naruto's arms. He heard a faint growl reverberating to his right and stifled the smile that threatened to appear by feigning a cough. Walking with him was Murahin, who was understandably in a foul mood. Not only had she lost to Naruto, but her opponent was the one he was supposed to carry. She hadn't even used those eyes to strike at them both. She'd simply brought the unknown variable, Urza or, in Mira's words, the redeeted bitch into the equation, gleaned information from her while defending the known variable, her, before treating her like they were little children. Looking at the redeed once more, Murahin grimaced. The reason we lost was because we didn't face it as a team. I let Urza handle most of the fighting and only attacked when an opportunity presented itself. Naruto has a better understanding of my abilities than she does, so I guess it's only natural that I attack her first. She glanced at the blonde out of the corner of her eye as he started a conversation with Kana. Still, that bitch should have something a little different, she grumbled. Flashback. Yes, I'm glad I could help, but we need to get stronger. This mission only showed me how lucky we were against that guy. If something like that happens again, we might not make it out alive. He spoke softly, slowly rubbing circles on Mira's back. It was something he'd developed when Satsuna came into his life. Right now, though, we should enjoy surviving. Then, we'll train until we're strong enough to protect our precious people. Beautiful people? Murahin asked, stepping back to look Naruto in the face. Naruto nodded. It's something a friend taught me before he died. A light of understanding appeared in Murahin's eyes, and Naruto continued. He believed that when a person has something important they want to protect, that's when they truly become strong. Murahin immediately thought of her brothers when she considered their words. Other images began to form behind them. Makarov, Kana, Laxus, Mikao, Natsu, Wakaba, Gray, even Urza was on her list. Do you have a precious person? Once. He died a few years ago. Nothing more was said as they broke their embrace. Though Naruto still had his arm around Murahin's shoulders. Then flashback. The memory playing in her mind was sudden and not entirely welcome. The possibility of stooping to ask Urza to work together was tempered by her newfound desire to grow stronger to protect her family. After all, years of constant struggle couldn't be stopped after a single mast, no matter how revealing. Mira bit her lip in frustration. She would have to think about it later in the day. Murahin continued to let her thoughts wander. Elfman would be discharged from the hospital that afternoon, probably around 3 o'clock. That meant she had a little over 8 hours to make a quick request, pick up some groceries, and prepare Elfman's favorite meal as a special welcome home treat. I hope nothing bad has happened to him. Lysana could barely sleep with all her worries. More bad news and she might lose them. A gentle tap interrupted her thoughts, and she blinked. She found herself standing in front of the guild, Naruto watching her with amusement, his crimson eyes dancing in her expression. A jewel for your thoughts. She shook her head, her mind still racing with ideas for surprising her little brother. It's nothing, really. Elfman is being discharged and I want to throw him a surprise party, or something. Naruto was cheered up by the news. That's great. I wanted to ask you something, would you mind if you came with me? Kana, having overheard enough of the conversation to realize her interest had piqued, joined in. What exactly are you two talking about? She asked, holding the door open for Naruto to enter. Muttering a quick thanks, the blonde slid in with his unconscious passenger and started heading for the guild's infirmary. I'll tell you later, Kana. I need to make sure Beniham-chan gets a good rest. He called out, navigating through the crowd that had gathered at his appearance. She barely paid attention to his words, choosing instead to go over what she was going to train the Strauss siblings for. During his walk, he reviewed what he had seen of Murahin's abilities and concluded that she and her siblings had the same problem he had years ago. They had no formal combat training. Elfman fought with nothing but brute strength and good reflexes. He never made a plan of attack, just charged in with flying fists and hoped it would all work out. Naruto frowned as solutions began to whisper in his mind. Boken could work for him. He doesn't have the flexibility to take the Gyuukin or the other shinobi to jutsu styles, and his strength would make him really effective against his opponents. I'll have to increase his speed as well. I can't have his full strength. Meditation and mental exercises are essential if he wants to master full body takeover. He managed to cross the guild hall before stopping and bowing his head. Nice job, idiot, volunteering to drop someone off at the infirmary when you have no idea where it is. Quickly making a clone and sending it to Makarov for the report, Naruto continued to ponder as he stroked Urza's red hair. He had settled into a squat, resting Urza's legs on the floor and her head in the crook of his left arm. Lysana is currently the weak link of those three. As she's a support mage, she'd be the first to be caught off guard. I'll have to observe her in action to determine her overall strength, but it would be best to teach her everything I can about healing. I doubt she can reverse engineer medical jutsu, but she'll have to be able to help them with more than just first aid. Now, how do I make her a badass medic? The answer came to him quickly, and Naruto was truly surprised by what his mind was offering him. I'll need to do more comparisons between chakra and magic to be sure, but I think that would be the best way to make her strong quickly. Once the foundation is established, I can increase her speed and strength extraordinarily in half a year. A stray thought caused his lips to twitch. Natsu will have to watch out for Lysana when I'm done with her. In his arms, Urza stirred slightly as she became more aware of herself. She tried to open her eyes, but the effort was immense, and she was forced to abandon her attempts immediately. Still a little dazed, she chose to snuggle closer to the warmth that held her. The innate strength of the hand supporting her back suggested she was being carried by a man, and the scent she inhaled smelled faintly of nature. Curiosity enveloped her, and Urza lifted her heavy eyelids to see a large blurry shape. Blinking several times to clear her vision, Urza found herself looking into Naruto's eyes and froze. The strange sensation that originated in her head was Naruto's fingers as he stroked her hair, almost lovingly. "Are you awake, Urza?" he asked as he stood up from his squatting position and headed toward the infirmary, grateful for the wonders of shadow clone jutsu. He was mildly amused by how quickly the girl's face went from pale to a furious red, which easily matched the shade of her hair in less than 2 seconds. "Just relax, and I'll explain when we get to the infirmary." She nodded without saying a word, not trusting herself to speak, and let herself be led by the blonde man. Fairy Tail Guild Hall. Hana watched Naruto leave with Urza in tow, quietly amused by the situation. He hasn't even been here a week, and he's already making a name for himself in the guild. However, as she considered his rapid achievements, she felt herself frown as thoughts began to whisper. If he continues at this rate, he'll become an S-class mage before me. If that happens, my chances of reaching S-class will be much lower. Her heart tightened at that thought. With monsters like Laxus and Naruto in the picture. A snort from her close companion pulled Kana from her thoughts. Murahin crossed her arms and watched Naruto's form disappear with narrowed eyes. "Stupid lucky bitch," she muttered, though Kana could make out what she'd said. A mischievous smile crept across Kana's face, and she draped an arm around the sullen mage, startling Murahin. She glanced sideways at Mira's annoyed and flustered expression. "So, Mira, why are you so interested in Naruto-san? I thought Laxus was your childhood toy." Murahin pulled away from Kana's grip but didn't kick. "First of all, Laxus is just a friend. I have no idea why you guys think we're a couple." She wrinkled her nose in disgust. Sure, Laxus had his good points, but he was too attached to Mira's tastes and constantly went out of his way to get requests that included her. "Naruto-kun is a nice guy I'd like to spend time with. He's also the first rookie to beat Red in me, which I don't think anyone expected. Besides, he's cool. Have you felt that hard body of his?" Murahin licked her lips. Hana sweated while playing the girl. She'd never met anyone as eccentric as Murahin. The girl could be calm and collected one minute, raging mad the next, and with such a foul mouth that Kana thought she'd been born shouting obscenities. Well, only you would be weird enough to touch someone within the first few minutes of meeting them. Mira nodded, ignoring the odd comment. "You should try it sometime. Maybe then you'll find someone good enough for you. On another note, do you know where Laxus is right now? I haven't seen that bastard for 2 weeks, and he must be betting me money." "Mirani?" Both girls turned to see Lysana standing behind them with her hands on her hips and a stern expression. Next to her were Natsu and Gray. The latter looked bored, and the former was feeding happy fish. "Aren't you supposed to be preparing for the surprise? We only have a few hours to get ready, you know." Hana, Gray, and Natsu were intrigued by the surprise, while Murahin rubbed her head in dismay. "Damn it, thanks for reminding me of Lysana. Would you mind telling Naruto-kun I have to go? He wanted to talk to Elfman, so you can let him know when he'll be discharged. Goodbye." With that, she stormed out of the guild, ignoring those she pushed and shoved aside. Firmness, Fairy Tail. Naruto sat on a nearby stool watching Urza recover. He had just told her about the events of the battle and was currently waiting for the Redeed to process everything he had said. It wasn't long before the Redeed sighed. "So I lost, huh? I shouldn't have sapped your strength." Naruto stood up and approached Urza, who was lying on one of the infirmary beds. "To be honest with you, you truly deserve your reputation. I've heard about requip magic and how difficult it is to repurchase various items. Not only can you acquire entire armor sets, but the speed at which you do it makes it deadly and versatile in combat. He paused to catch his breath and continued. However, it does have some obvious weaknesses. First, it exposes itself whenever it prepares to repurchase a request, and immediately afterward. Not many people are quick enough to exploit that, but it's still a weakness. Second, your focus is too narrowly limited to swordsmanship, which makes you vulnerable to experienced hand-to-hand combatants. I think you're already aware of that, aren't you? Urza grimaced at the memory of that beating. Yes. What would you suggest I do? It was strange, in Urza's opinion, that she was asking someone who had joined the guild about how to improve when she usually only practiced by training dummies or sparring with Marahan to help correct her mistakes. Naruto tapped his chin. Do you mind if I sit next to you? She silently moved away, giving him room to sit. Sinking back onto the comfortable bed, Naruto resumed his train of thought. What I would suggest is asking the best hand-to-hand mage in the guild to teach you a few things and training from time to time. You could keep your swords, but incorporate everything you learn into your fighting style to keep your skills well-rounded. Urza blinked a few times, running her advice through her mind. How do you know so much about fighting when you're just she trailed off, realizing she had no idea how old Naruto was. Forgive my manners, but how old are you exactly? Naruto ignored her curiosity. I'm 13, about the same age as Mira-chan if I had to guess. My godfather raised me to be the best in combat, whether it was melee, mid-range, long-range, or magic. He was very demanding and pushed me to my limits, making sure I understood everything I needed to know about fighting. Lying on the spot is so annoying. I'll have to contact Jiraiya and come up with a cover story for when I get back. Urza nodded, accepting his story. So you defeated Mira and me because you were stronger and more experienced than us? Yes and no. Well, my skills were superior to yours in terms of control and power, your lack of teamwork was what really caused your downfall. Urza started with that. The idea of working together hadn't even crossed her mind at that moment. All she'd wanted to do was fight him and see how she fared against him. Teamwork? Naruto nodded. Why do you think I kept switching between you and Mira-chan and back again every time you got close? I wanted to keep you separated, making it easier to defeat you both. If you had both focused on fighting me as a team, with you keeping me busy with long-range attacks and Mira-chan closing in to finish me off, the outcome of our fight would have been different. Urza pouted cutely. Marahan would rather eat manure than work with me. Naruto raised an eyebrow. If you don't mind me asking, why are you and Mira-chan so competitive? Sure, you two are rivals, so some trash talk is to be expected, but you two do it all the time, and it's pretty intense to watch. If anything, their rivalry seemed like a watered-down version of Madara and Hashirama in terms of destruction, and a diluted version of his and Sasuke's in terms of intensity. Urza shrugged and looked away from him. It's something we've been doing since we met. There's no particular reason for it. Marahan keeps challenging me, and I keep going. For some reason, opening up to Naruto was so easy for her. He just had this aura that drew you to trust him. I see. Naruto stood up, turning to Urza with a smile. I'm sorry to leave you alone, but I have some things that require my attention. I hope to see you soon, Beniham-chan. He walked to the door and opened it, but didn't leave yet. Hiding your heart behind that armor isn't the best solution, he stated, still looking away. Acknowledging the darkness within ourselves is necessary for personal growth. Keeping it all inside is detrimental to you and your family. He turned to face her, surprised, with a kind look. You may have fooled others, but you can't fool someone who's been wearing a mask their whole life. You want to be strong so you're never hurt again, whether physically or emotionally. That armor of yours gives you strength, but you're only showing your crutch. Accept your negative aspects, and your heart will begin its healing journey. He gave her another smile. As a fellow brother and friend, I offer my help and support for your personal growth. Good morning. With a nod, he walked away. Urza just sat there, staring at the space Naruto's form had occupied, a whirlwind of emotions paralyzing her. She ran his words through her mind once more, recalling the sincere look in his eyes. Her face warmed slightly as she remembered his new nickname for her. Beniham-chan friend. Time omitted. 6 hours later. Hey Elfman. Where the hell have you been? Mikao called out when the Strauss family arrived with Elfman from Mage Hospital. Elfman didn't look any different, except for the bandages that could be seen covering his chest. Elfman gave a shaky laugh in response, rubbing the back of his head. I'm sorry, but I wasn't feeling well. Mirani and Lysandra picked me up from the hospital. Mikao simply waved her apology. I'm glad to hear you're alright. Naruto's been waiting for you. He said something about training. Elfman stopped and scanned the hall, looking for the blonde boy. He soon spotted Naruto sitting in the center with Kana, deep in conversation. Turning to Mikao and Lysandra, he waved before taking off. Marahan had gone to a job application some time ago after they celebrated with a special lunch, so she wouldn't be back for a while. Lysana went to find Natsu and happy to play with. Naruto looked up from his drink to see Elfman wandering toward him. He sighed and stood up to meet him, saying goodbye to Kana. He approached his new friend and bowed his head slightly. "Hey. Are you feeling better?" Yes, Elfman's throat went dry as the seconds ticked by and he resisted the urge to swallow. "So," he began, looking firmly at Naruto. "You said you wanted to talk to me?" A nod was her response. "I want to help you deal with that problem of yours. Right now, anyone who takes a request from you will be fighting for their lives if that beast takes control of your body." Elfman felt the words stab him and winced. He knew what Naruto meant. If he hadn't been there at that moment, Murahin would have been hurt. Badly. Knowing that it inflamed her guilt and determination, he wouldn't be a burden to his family. "I accept." Naruto blinked. "You didn't hear me. There's no need to do this. Without you, Mirani would be in the hospital right now, nothing more than a prisoner in my own body." Elfman shuddered at the memory of the beast's immense power. It was like a raging tidal surge that shattered everything in its path, breaking down his mental defenses as if they didn't exist. It frightened him. If Naruto could help him stop the beast from taking control, he would do whatever it took. He had to protect his family. "I don't care if it's difficult. I don't care if it's dangerous for me. Please," his knees buckled in permission. "Help me become strong." Naruto raised an eyebrow. They had a lot of work to do. Time omitted. 6 months. Naruto entered the guild with Setsuna in tow, his arm draped around her shoulders once more. Half a year had passed since Naruto had offered Elfman the chance to master his magic, and Naruto couldn't have been prouder of his friend. His progress had been average, but that meant nothing to Naruto. People developed at different rates because everyone was unique. Elfman was the type who learned through repeated exercises of increasing difficulty. He wasn't exactly brilliant, but he was clever at using what he had learned and what was available to him to his advantage. However, if Naruto was to be honest with himself, Elfman's weaknesses were still prominent. Having grown up with a boisterous group in Fairy Tail, he was impatient, prone to fits of foolishness, and rarely accepted help from anyone. No matter how many times Naruto emphasized the importance of teamwork, Elfman remained stubborn and refused to cooperate. Oh good. I didn't know Naruto had struck him in the stubbornness. It would be a wake-up call for him when Naruto resorted to more drastic measures. In any case, besides training Elfman, Naruto and Setsuna had been making a name for themselves, though the former did so reluctantly. Several clients who took their job applications were hired by Naruto and praised his fighting skills, as well as the fact that he didn't destroy anything like the other Fairy Tail wizards. Women had also come to know him for his magic hands. Several requests for a masseur came into Fairy Tail, specifically requesting the blonde after his first client, a wealthy woman with considerable political influence, mentioned him during one of her social gatherings. From that day on, the older men admired him as if he were their god. Setsuna was also praised for her strength and had been crowned the Queen of Lightning because she couldn't control Kage over her primary element. Unlike Naruto, she was very demanding in her work requests and treated her clients with nothing but cold courtesy, earning her the nickname Demon King's Raven. Her friendship with Kana had also strengthened over the period. She was unable to connect with Gray and Natsu, seeing them as too annoying to be anything more than guildmates. Of course, there was also the fact that she could kick their butt several shades of wind with one arm. Her relationship with Urza had progressed into friendship, providing the Redeed with a training partner who would help her progress at a much faster pace than before. Murahin, on the other hand, had declared Setsuna her eternal rival after witnessing Urza's defeat at Setsuna's hands during one of their training sessions. Setsuna thought that Murahin liked to think that she was strong enough to call herself Setsuna's rival. "Good morning, Naruto. You look great, as always," Kana complained. The brunette had grown another centimeter taller and puberty had begun to show signs of its progress, resulting in increased male attention. At that moment, she was slumped over the table, her hair disheveled and her eyes lined with dark circles that blatantly suggested her current mood. "Seriously, how do you look so refreshed every single time? Even your hair looks better than mine on my best morning." Detaching himself from Setsuna, who pouted sadly at the loss of contact, Naruto sat down with a bored expression. "To be honest, I don't really know how my hair looks so well groomed. I guess it's just amazing." Amusement flickered in his eyes when Kana glared at his hair, as if blaming him for its current state. "Besides, I get up early to do some jogging around Magnolia to get my blood pumping. You should try it sometime." Kana just shrank even more. "Do I look like I have your crazy energy? I don't even have the energy to get out of bed in the mornings, let alone go for a jog." She groaned. Setsuna sat down as well, finally joining the conversation. "Are you going to a job application later today?" "Naruto. Fight me." A voice roared. Naruto sighed in exasperation as Natsu's flame-coated fists hurtled toward his face at medium speed. You'd think I'd have learned by now. Incredibly, he ducked his head to avoid Natsu's punch, stretched out his right arm, and grabbed the tumbling boy by his hair. With a not-so-gentle flick of his wrist, Naruto sent poor Natsu crashing into the second floor wall. The sound of flesh hitting stone brought him a certain satisfaction. Anna lifted her head and looked at her. "No, I'm not really ready for an application today. Besides," her face twisted into a strange expression, "Gilderts is coming today." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Gilderts, Fairy Tail's ace, huh? There must be time for the S-class trials." Sneaking into Makarov's office was something he rarely did, but he was glad he'd taken advantage of this opportunity. The S-class mage promotion trial was something he was interested in. Right now, he was well funded thanks to Everlu's fortune, and letting his name grow in Fiori would be beneficial. Not only would it deter other guilds from picking a fight with Fairy Tail, but it would also encourage Naraku to pursue him. Besides, he could fight Gildert's mysterious Clive and finally see what made him so special. "Listen up, you good-for-nothing brats." All activity ceased as Makarov's voice rose above the din. The diminutive old man stood on the second-floor stair railing, radiating an aura of seriousness and excitement. "I'm sure most of you are aware of what this announcement is about. For the newcomers, it's time for an event that will mark your advancement to the truly exceptional. The S-class exams." A powerful roar of applause reverberated through the hall, each member displaying enthusiasm and excitement on their face. As you know, the S-class mage promotion trials are an annual tradition in which we participate to give any mage the opportunity to become an S-class elite. This year, we have 3 trials and a battle royale. Each of these trials will test the following qualities: leadership, intelligence, and battle prowess. These trials will assess your standing with respect to the aforementioned traits, while the battle royale gives mages the opportunity to showcase their skills and impress the judges. Natsu let out a shout of joy, prompting another round of applause. "The trials begin at the end of the month. Those interested should come and sign their names in my office." Seeing the younger ones turning to rush toward his office, Makarov shouted once more. "Oh, I just remembered. No one under 13 will be allowed. That's especially for you, Natsu." "That? How's it that Naruto and the girls have fun? Real men need to shine too." "Silence." Makarov's head grew to demonic proportions as he towered over the terrified boys, a terrible aura surrounding him. "When I say something, you'd better listen. Understand that?" Hi. Anna sighed heavily as the noise continued. Why was life so damn troublesome? Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. It was almost time. Soon, his true abilities would be revealed. Did the council want to test his power? He would show it to them. It would show everyone how dangerous it could be. Penru Island. A sleeping figure stirred in its slumber, a frown creasing its face. "Uzumaki Naruto," the figure murmured in its sleep, a dark aura beginning to emanate from its sleeping body. "Friend. An. Freedom has never tasted so sweet. I'm done with Ixes. Can someone give me a shout or what?" Now, I know I was going to wrap this up soon and move on to the beginning of canon, but I want to expand a bit on Naruto's S-class trials. Well, a lot, but that's not the point. They always seem to have Naruto becoming an S-class by fighting Gilderts. Now, while I like it and plan to do it too, I think it takes more than that for a mage to become S-class. If the mage isn't qualified to lead a party, why should they be able to accompany other mages on S-class missions? Also, S-class means they're the elite. In my opinion, that means you have to be smart and strong. Intelligence, analytical skills, and strategy should all be factored into the evaluations. Hopefully, you love it. Laxus hasn't made his debut yet, so Mira will be closer to Naruto than she'd like when he returns. The next chapter will feature the debuts of Laxus, the Thunder Legion, the Magic Council, Seagrain, Gel, and Altair. The battles I'm planning will be incredible. I will be updating all my other stories before considering bringing my new Naruto Bleach story. Chapter 11. A storm is coming. Oh yeah. Naruto dodged Elfman's direct hit, throwing himself backward to the ground. His student's enormous black hairy arm navigated through the empty space it had previously occupied with far greater speed than Elfman usually displayed, an indication of his growth under Naruto's tutelage. "Not bad," he said. Slapping his foot, Naruto stopped his fall and delivered a brutal backhand kick right into Elfman's chin. Elfman's momentum was shattered, leaving him disoriented and suspended in midair. One of the worst possible positions to be in against someone of Naruto's caliber. But not good enough. A second kick slammed into Elfman's guts and propelled him a good 10 feet, saliva and drops of blood forced from his mouth and into the air. With a thud, the disciple crashed into the vegetation surrounding his training grounds, leaving skid marks that tore his clothes. Gritting his teeth, Elfman focused and managed to half-jump back onto his feet with the help of a beast leg. Black Bull spell. "I'm not finished yet, Naruto-sensei," he roared. Naruto also stood up, preparing for the next wave. "Show me then." come on, let's see the fruits of your training. Without wasting a moment, Elfman clasped his hands around the monkey seal and focused. The seal aided him in his meditation and when gathering magical energy for his spells, but overall, it was unnecessary. While it helped him concentrate better, it didn't mean he couldn't do it without it. The deception, the large magic circle burst into existence before him, churning out yellow-tinged energy in waves that, had Makarov been there, would have shocked the guild master. Anyone sensitive to the levels of energy being released would be astonished if they compared it to Elfman's previous magical ability. It wasn't just a little bigger. It was almost as if he were a completely different person. His newfound magical power had increased far beyond what he had anticipated. At the moment, his ability rivaled that of his older sister in her takeover form, something very few within the guild could boast of. Briarg. As Elfman's scream deepened and became more bestial, his body was also undergoing several changes. His upper torso was rapidly expanding, becoming more bulky as the transformation continued. His legs were steadily swelling, taking on the appearance